Chapter 2178. Li Jianlin was pleasantly surprised and said, "Thank you, Auntie." The game console was huge with 2 controllers and a huge screen. It was in the shape of a robot and the boys liked it at first sight. Li Moyun immediately rushed over and shouted, "Mom, I'm definitely not your biological son. Why didn't you give me a game console?" "Because you'll be addicted to games, but Jianlin won't," Li Jianqian said. "Accept your fate," Li Moyun said. "No, that's not fair. I won't be addicted to games. Jianlin, let's play together." Li Jianlin thought to himself, no. However, his parents were still around. Li Jianlin hesitated for a moment and said, "Let's give it a try." Li Moyun almost burst into tears. He immediately followed and said, "I knew Jianlin is the best." Li Jianlin was speechless. Xueqi smiled and rummaged through her suitcase. "This is for Chu. It's a set of the original works of the top 10 classical novels in the world." Yu Chulin was surprised. "There's one for me? Thank you, Auntie." "Of course, everyone has one. This is for Nanny Rong." Xueqi finally stood up. "I've also prepared one for Pan Pan. I'll bring it over to your Uncle Rong's house tomorrow." Rong Pan Pan had also grown up and loved to look beautiful. Therefore, she had brought a beautiful princess dress for her. Xueqi tidied up and quickly returned to the room with Li Xiqing. After so many years of being married, Li Xiqing's love for Xueqi had never decreased. Every day and every night, they wished they could be together forever. They were really attached to each other. After the couple left, the children looked through their gifts one by one. They were all very surprised. Li Jianqian put the vinyl record into the record player. Soon, a soothing and classic music came out. It was romantic and lyrical with a lingering charm that lingered in the air. As far as the eye could see, the group of people were living together in harmony. Oming and Yu Lily had been married for more than 10 years, but Oming's passion for her was still the same as when they had just gotten married. In the O family villa in Yuxiu, Yu Lily was so overwhelmed that she couldn't breathe. She pushed him and shouted, "Don't go too far. Our daughter will be back soon." "So be it. What are you afraid of?" Oming hung up the last accessory and finally smiled with satisfaction. "This looks good. Come, look in the mirror." Yu Lily was in her 30s, nearing her 40s. Her face looked especially small. At this moment, she was wearing the wedding dress that she had worn on her wedding day more than 10 years ago. The phoenix coronet and red shawl made it hard for her to breathe. She looked at Oming and said, "Is there something wrong with you? Why did you make me wear this all of a sudden?" "Beautiful. Very beautiful." Oming's eyes scanned her body greedily and covetously. Then he hugged her and said, "So beautiful." "Well, I don't want to wear it. It's too heavy." "Hurry up and take a picture. Then help me take it off." Yu Lily shook her clothes. "Why aren't you changing?" Oming's beautiful peach blossom eyes narrowed. He opened his arms and hugged her firmly. He whispered, "I didn't let you wear it for the sake of taking photos." "Then why?" "To take it off." After Oming finished speaking, he picked her up and put her on the bed. "Today is our wedding anniversary. Have you forgotten?" Yu Lily replied, "I forgot." Chapter 2179. Oming's words were full of resentment. Yu Lily heard it clearly, and she burst out laughing. She held his face with both hands and kissed him. "With the intention of saving him," she said. "As long as you remember it." Oming's face hardened. He snorted and immediately unbuttoned her clothes. Layer by layer, Oming was addicted to it and serious. In the end, when he was only left with his underwear, he looked at her with shining eyes and said, "Wifey, I have good news and bad news for you." "What?" Yu Lily's mind was filled with thoughts of where to eat and play that night. When she heard this, she looked down at him. "Do you want to hear the good news or the bad news first?" "The bad news." "Then I'll say the good news first." Oming mysteriously pressed down on her and kissed her. "We don't need to wear condoms in the future." "Why?" "I want to go for sterilization." Yu Lily was speechless. Hearing this, Yu Lily sat up and looked at him with a serious face. Oming was half lying on his stomach and blinked at her. "Oming, are you serious?" Oming replied, "Yeah." "Why? It's too troublesome to wear a condom. Oh Ming pounced on her again. I'm already in my 40s, and I don't plan to have another child. It's too troublesome. You're an old woman, and it's dangerous. We only have Xiao Xiao. How old is Xiao Xiao? It's not a problem to have another child. Yu Lily hugged him. Let's have another child? Oh Ming's eyes suddenly became hot. He reached out to press her softness and asked, why do you suddenly want to have a second child? I think Mom is right. Yu Lily's face showed some struggle. Your mom brainwashes me every day, telling me to have a second child, and a second child, and a third child. She's been talking about it for almost 10 years. Let's have one. Who knows, we might even have a boy. That way, Mom won't nag me so much. What if it's a girl? Yu Lily immediately became depressed and said, that can only mean that we're unlucky. We can only accept it. Oh Ming couldn't wait any longer. He directly said, come on then. Yu Lily quickly held him down and asked, are you still going for sterilization? No. Because both Oh Ming and Yu Lily's cell phones were connected, but no one picked up, Oh Xiao Xiao was ordered to go home to find her parents and go to her godparents' house for dinner. As soon as he opened the door, he saw that the house was empty. She went to her parents' room with ease. Oh Xiao Xiao raised her fist and knocked on the door twice, shouting, Dad! Mom! Oh Ming, who was holding his wife, suddenly froze. Yu Lily couldn't get up or down. She punched him and shouted, hurry up! Oh Ming replied, what's up Xiao Xiao? Godfather and godmother are calling you for dinner. Got it. Yu Lily agreed. She then dawdled and urged, you go ahead first Xiao Xiao. We'll be there later. Oh Xiao Xiao was already 11 years old, so she probably didn't know much about anything at this time. But she also knew that she couldn't open her parents' door directly. She had to knock on the door and wait for them to let her in. Yushio's soundproofing had always been very good. Oh Xiao Xiao left immediately after hearing her mother's shout. He didn't even hear the various harmonious and disharmonious sounds coming from inside. Chapter 2180. The relationship between the husband and wife was like a day for 10 years. When they arrived at the Li residence, Yu Lily and Oh Ming came arm in arm. The children were already used to it. They ate, drank, and played as usual. The adults gathered together to chat, and the children were having a good time in the living room. However, Li Jianyue found that Li Mosen looked a little strange today. He was unusually quiet today. Although Li Mosen didn't usually speak much, there was almost no one who made people feel that he was so gloomy. Sister Ursu, come and play games with me. Oh Xiao Xiao tugged at Li Jianyue. I can't get past this stage. It's so annoying. Stop playing games. Let's have fun later. Li Moyun was always full of ideas. When he saw that everyone was gathered together, the adults didn't care. He took out a deck of cards and said, come, let's play together. No matter how big or small you are, gather together. Li Jianqian sat on the sofa and enjoyed the original soundtrack of the vinyl record. Yu Chulin had just received the book from Su Qianxi and was already reading it. Li Moyun couldn't stay idle. He immediately went up and pulled them over. He shouted, come. If the two of you don't take the lead, the others won't dare to come. You can do that at any time. It's rare for you to come back. Come. His voice was so loud that even Li Xiqing and Oh Ming, who were talking in the living room, heard it. Oh Ming laughed. Look at your youngest son. You're so boring. Sister-in-law is also more introverted and quiet. How did you give birth to such a clown? Li Xiqing couldn't understand it either. He thought of Li Moyun's chubby face, but his facial features were exactly the same as his. He sighed and said, when things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. Daisu looks like me, Ursu looks like my woman, and Xiaoxi looks like anyone. The smile on Oh Ming's face deepened. His peach blossom eyes were filled with helplessness and curiosity. He said, Mosen doesn't look like Tang Menjing. He looks more and more like an Asian. If he knows what happened in the past, will he blame you? Li Xiqing played a big part in the Tang family's downfall. They knew the evil things the Tang family had done, but Li Mosen didn't. Oh Ming felt that Li Mosen was like a ticking time bomb. Although he had watched him grow up, Li Mosen's blue eyes were as gloomy and silent as he was. It was too deep. Every time he saw him, he would always remember that this was Tang Menjing's child. The woman who had almost ruined Li Xiqing's family was raped by a foreigner and gave birth to her. When Li Xiqing heard that, the smile on his face faded. After a moment of silence he said, "He knows." Ming raised his eyebrows. What? When his biological mother died, he was right in front of him. Li Xiqing looked at Ming. Have you forgotten? I haven't forgotten. Chapter 2181. Ming's eyebrows moved and he put down the teacup. He stood up and walked out. The children gathered together, playing some unknown game. Not a single one of the children was wearing blue. Mosen was not among them. Ming's heart sank. He turned back and closed the door of the living room. He sat down again with a look of annoyance. I think I'm in trouble, he said. Li Mosen originally just wanted to go to the bathroom. But when he heard Li Xiqing and Ming talking, he happened to hear them mention Tang Menjing's name. Tang Menjing. He was not unfamiliar with the name. It could even be said that he remembered it from childhood. That was his biological mother's name. And this woman hated him to the core even before he was born. His only impression of this woman was when he was 6 years old, beside a small pond near the Li family's old house. She strangled his neck and laughed, telling him that she was his mother. Li Mosen was shocked to hear such a word out of the blue. He unconsciously stopped and leaned against the door to listen to their conversation. When he heard Li Xiqing's words, he felt a little disappointed. Because Xueqi treated him as a son, so he treated him as a son, right? Li Mosen couldn't tell what he was feeling. Disappointment and loss. But he was not sad. He knew his identity. He knew it since he was young. He should be grateful that the Li family adopted him and gave him such a good education. He really didn't have the right to ask for more. Li Mosen just turned around and suddenly met Ming's eyes. Feeling guilty, he quickly turned around and quickly ran to the corridor. His heart was beating fast. Li Mosen went to the bathroom. When he came out again, the door of the living room was closed. That's not right. They didn't say anything serious. Why did he hide? Li Mosen straightened his back and walked back. Li Moyun had already explained the rules to the group, and the cards in his hand were also rustling. Li Mosen listened to the rules and knew that they were going to play a killing game together. When Li Jianyue saw him, she immediately jumped up and said, "Brother Mosen, sit next to me." No, Mosen can't sit there. That's right. Brother Mosen will go easy on you. You want to cheat. Sister Ursu is too cunning. Li Jianyue didn't feel that she was cheating at all. She said confidently, "I have a good relationship with Brother Mosen. You guys can be jealous." As he spoke, he didn't care about the crowd's protests and directly pulled him to sit down. "You can be my superior." Li Mosen unconsciously curled his lips and was dragged to sit down by her. Li Jianyue smiled when she saw his expression. She leaned over and whispered in his ear, "Are you in a bad mood today?" There was a faint fragrance of a young girl on Li Jianyue's body. It didn't seem like any perfume. It was a unique smell. Li Mosen felt a little nervous when he felt the warmth in his ears. Hearing Li Jianyue's words, Li Mosen paused slightly and looked at her sideways. Li Jianyue blinked her big eyes and smiled. She looked innocent and sincere. Although Li Jianyue sometimes looked stupid and her IQ was not particularly high, she was sensitive and meticulous. That was what Xueqi was after. Chapter 2182. After getting Li Mosen's affirmative answer, Li Jianyue didn't take it to heart. She turned her head and arrogantly raised her eyebrows at her friends and said, "Come on, let's begin." Seeing this posture, everyone knew that Li Jianyue was full of confidence. Li Moyun was very dissatisfied and directly waved his hand and said, No, Brother Mosen can't sit here, let's change seats." "No, you're bullying me." Li Jianyue refused. "Besides, Brother Mosen and I may be enemies." "That won't work either, he will never kill you." Li Moyun had already seen through everything and said disdainfully, "You're relying on Brother Mosen, do you dare to play by yourself?" Li Jianyue laughed shamelessly and said confidently, "I don't dare." "That's it," Li Mosen said lightly in a low voice. "Do you have any objections?" He glanced at him indifferently and Li Moyun immediately shrank back. It's a game, there must be a punishment, Oh Xiao suggested. How about the loser drink 3 glasses of water? I have no objections. Okay, let's go. Get ready. I will definitely kill you until not a single piece of armor remains. When Li Moyun said this, he looked at Li Jianyue. Li Jianyue was not afraid and smiled with both hands on the table to fight. In the end, Li Moyun quickly slapped his face. He wanted to kill Li Jianyue but failed. Instead, he was targeted by Li Mosun. After a dozen rounds, no matter how he pretended or acted, Li Mosun was always able to expose him. In the end, Li Moyun wanted to cry but had no tears. He pitifully begged for mercy. Brother Mosun, I really can't drink anymore, please let me go. No. Li Jianyue immediately jumped up. You only know how to bully me, drink it. Li Moyun leaned on the table and touched his bulging stomach, wailing. Sister, my dear sister, you can't treat your brother like this, I'll tell Mom later. Then I'll tell Dad. Let's see who's more ruthless. Humph. Li Moyun was speechless. There was no justice. A man had no dignity. Li Moyun raised his head angrily and looked at Li Jianyue's annoyed expression. Everyone thought that he had decided to start a rebellion and looked at him expectantly. In the end, Li Moyun jumped up and slammed the table, shouting, I'll drink. Everyone. The game ended quickly, and the children dispersed in 2s and 3s. Yu Xiu's house didn't have much, but it had a lot of rooms. There were 4 bedrooms on the 2nd floor and 5 on the 3rd. They were all suites and were very spacious. Li Jianyue and Li Mosun had always stayed on the 2nd floor, and Li Jianqian used to stay on the 2nd floor. Now that Yu Chulin was here as well, he simply asked Nanny Rong and another servant to move his things to the 3rd floor so that he could keep Yu Chulin company. After the crowd dispersed, Li Jianyue realized that Li Mosun seemed to be really unhappy. Seeing that Li Mosun was about to return to his room, Li Jianyue quickly followed him. She stood beside him and shouted, Brother Mosun, what's wrong with you today? You don't look very happy. Li Mosun glanced at her and shook his head gently. I'm fine. How can you be fine? Li Jianyue didn't believe him. Then, as if she had thought of something, she naturally hugged Li Mosun's arm and said, I made a little thing recently. Come over, I'll show you. She looked a little excited. Although she didn't have any makeup on, she looked like she was overflowing with colors. Li Mosun lowered his head to look at her hand, and his suppressed emotions eased up a lot. The corners of his lips curled up soundlessly, and he followed her into her room. From now on, there would be 1 update a day, with occasional updates. The update time would be at 11 p.m. Chapter 2183. Li Jianyue carried out the little thing that she had carefully made. It was a wishing bottle. It was already filled with stars, layer by layer with distinct colors. From bottom to top, the colors were red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple. Li Jianyue stuffed the wishing bottle into Li Mosun's arms and said, This is for you. A bright smile blossomed on her small face, and she said, I've been doing this for a long time, and I haven't had the time to make a wish. Seeing that you're so unhappy today, here, quickly make a wish. Li Mosun had a look of disdain on his face. He reached out and pushed her head. How old are you? You still believe in such things? So what? Li Jianyue put her hands on her hips and said confidently, I believe in this. It's always a heart. As the saying goes, a sincere heart works. If you believe in it, it will happen. Li Mosun snickered and looked at her helplessly. Li Jianyue was furious and reached out to snatch it back. If you don't want it, give it back to me. Li Mosun hugged the small bottle and turned to avoid it. How can I take back what I've given away? You're so annoying. Li Jianyue's face turned red. Li Mosun chuckled and rubbed her head. All right, I like it very much. I don't believe you, you're lying to me. Really? Li Mosun held the wishing bottle in his arms and asked, How long did you fold these stars? It's been quite a long time, Li Jianyue muttered angrily. I was the one who secretly folded them. I was planning to use them to make a wish. What wish do you want to make? Li Mosun rubbed her head. I'll see if I can help you realize it. You can't. How would I know if you don't tell me? When Li Jianyue heard this, she actually felt that it made sense. She blinked her big bright eyes and looked at Li Mosen. I want to skip a grade and go straight to the 3rd year of high school. Then, I'll be admitted to the same university as you. Li Mosen was slightly stunned. He didn't expect Li Genue's wish to be this. Li Mosen's heart softened. He looked at Li Genue and thought for a moment. It's indeed a little difficult. Li Genue was so angry that her face turned pink. She clenched her fists and said, "You're asking for a beating." Li Mosen smiled. "Which university do you want to go to?" "Kong University." "You don't want to go anywhere else?" "I don't want to," Li Genue said confidently. "Why should I go somewhere else? Mom and Dad are both here. Now that my brother is back, I want to get into Kingstown University. Kingstown University is a 985 university. Can you get in?" "Then, other schools are fine too. Kingstown University of Foreign Languages, Kingstown Family Business School, those are closer to home. I don't have to stay there." The smile on Li Mosen's face widened. Who would pick a school like that? Just because it's close to home, you choose? These schools are all top schools. I know. Moreover, I'm only in the 1st year of high school. How do you know that I won't be able to get into these schools? My grades are very good. Moreover, aren't you the one tutoring me? Li Genue was annoyed. That makes sense. Seeing his perfunctory attitude, Li Genue was so angry that she didn't want to talk to him anymore. Brother and Brother Chu will also tutor me. I will definitely be able to rely on them. Brother Chu. Li Mosen raised his eyebrows slightly. He then took a step forward. What do you think about what Granny Rong said to you today? Li Genue blinked. What? What do you think? Ah, you're talking about Granny Rong asking me to date Brother Chu? Li Genue suddenly understood. Li Mosen frowned a little unhappily. Just as he was about to speak, the voice of a youth came from outside. Who wants to date me? Chapter 2184. A voice came from afar, but it wasn't clear. When Li Genue heard the voice, she turned to look. Yu Chulin walked over with a smile on his face. That smile looked especially warm and natural, and it was directed at Li Genue. Li Mosen only felt that Yu Chulin's smile was particularly eye-catching. He was like a wastrel who attracted bees and butterflies. In fact, Li Genue was indeed bewitched by Yu Chulin's smile. A pair of bright eyes stared straight at Yu Chulin. Then she smiled and said, "Brother Chu, you're so good-looking." Yu Chulin smiled even more happily and said, "It's so late." "What are you talking about?" Li Genue was a big-hearted person. When she heard that, she wanted to explain, "It's today." "What's the matter?" Li Mosen interrupted Li Genue and looked at Yu Chulin. "It's so late. You haven't showered yet, have you?" Yu Chulin knew that Li Mosen was deliberately changing the topic, but he didn't mind. He smiled and said, "Yes, not yet. I was just about to go downstairs to get something. I heard you talking and wanted to join in the fun. Ursu, you don't mind, right?" "Of course not," Li Genue smiled. "What are you going downstairs to get? I might have seen it." "A phone charger. I was playing downstairs in the afternoon and forgot to take it when I came up." "I'll go with you. I'm going to get a glass of water too." Li Genue walked over with a natural expression. However, before she took a step forward, Li Mosen stopped her. "Wait here. I'll go. What water do you want to drink?" "Lemonade, not iced." "Okay, wait here." Li Mosen held the wishing bottle in his hand and swaggered out. At the same time, he pushed Yu Chulin out as well. Li Mosen closed the door and led Yu Chulin downstairs. Yu Chulin was 2 years older than Daesu and Ursu, but only 1 year older than Li Mosen. This 1-year difference did not make Li Mosen feel that there was a big gap between him and Yu Chulin. When they were walking down the stairs, Li Mosen said, "Ursu is a little careless. Sometimes, she doesn't know much about the ways of the world, but I think you should know." Yu Chulin had his left hand in his trouser pocket. When he heard this, he still had a warm smile on his face as he raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at him. Li Mosen did not seem to notice Yu Chulin's gaze. With a natural expression, he continued, "I hope that you won't enter a girl's room in the future." Yu Chulin chuckled. "Then what were you doing inside just now?" "I'm her brother." Li Mosen turned around and looked at him calmly. Yu Chulin nodded, but he looked deeply into Li Mosen's eyes and said slowly, "After all, he's not his biological son." Li Mosen's eyes flickered, but after a moment he said slowly, "Indeed, but this does not conflict with my request. You are not allowed to enter Ursu's room in the future. Just now, I hope you don't go in. Now is not the time to go in." One was still a little polite, but the other was not the least bit hypocritical. Although he had a smile on his face, his unfriendly intentions were clear. Li Mosen turned around and pointed to the white thing in the corner. "Your charger is over there. Take it and go up." After he finished speaking, he walked into the kitchen calmly. He was acting like a master. Chapter 2185. Yu Chulin stood and looked at Li Mosen for a long time before he shook his head with a helpless smile. This kid's hostility was too obvious. His motive was too obvious. Yu Chulin unplugged the charger and turned to return to his room. When he passed by the second floor, he clearly saw Ursu peeking out. Yu Chulin saw her and said, "Good night." Li Jianyue giggled and said, "Good night, Brother Chu. It's a weekend tomorrow. Shall we go to the amusement park?" Yu Chulin nodded slightly. "Sure." He kept a smile on his face. It was faint but comforting. Li Jianyue blushed slightly and nodded before she went back into her room. Yu Chulin heard soft footsteps behind him. He turned around and saw Li Mosen with an unfriendly look on his face. Li Mosen was holding a glass of water in his hand. It seemed to be still warm as steam was rising from it. Yu Chulin took a glance and said, "Ursu asked me to go to the amusement park tomorrow. I'll go up first." Li Mosen watched him walk up step by step before he continued to walk the rest of the way. Yu Chulin naturally sensed the gaze behind him. He straightened his body and walked up the stairs steadily. However, he couldn't help but feel a little playful towards Li Mosen. When he went upstairs, he saw Li Jianxian leaning against the doorframe of his room. Li Jianxian looked at Yu Chulin and said, "Mosen grew up with Ursu. I won't allow you to have any ideas about my sister, let alone him. Don't take his words to heart." Yu Chulin smiled faintly. "Why would I? Go to sleep." After saying goodbye to Li Jianxian, Yu Chulin went to his room. The smile on his face gradually disappeared. Li Jianyue's slightly pink face flashed across his mind. The affection that flashed through his heart was obvious. However, he only liked her as a little sister. Why was everyone guarding against him as if he was a thief? Li Mosen brought a glass of water for Ursu and reminded her seriously, "Ursu, high school is a time when your studies are intense. I won't ask for anything else from you, but you must not fail any subjects. You must enter the same university as me, understand?" "Ha!" Li Jianyue took the water and was a little confused. She quickly replied, "Oh, okay." After sending Li Mosen off, Li Jianyue drank some water and tossed and turned on her pink princess bed. She couldn't fall asleep no matter how hard she tried. Hugging her pink heart-shaped pillow, her mind was filled with wild thoughts. She thought about Nanny Rong's words, Li Mosen's strange behavior, and Li Mosen's solemn instructions. In the end, Yu Chulin's fair and bright face appeared in his mind. When he smiled, his eyes curved like crescent moons. The way he looked at her was as if he wanted to hold her in his heart, doting and gentle. Li Jianyue blinked her eyes and suddenly came to a realization. "Oh my God! Could it be that Brother Chu likes me? Was that why Granny Rong said that? Was that why Brother Mosen said that? It can't be." Li Jianyue found it a little unbelievable. Really? Yu Chulin was like a big brother to her. If there were feelings like when she fell in love in junior high, she wouldn't feel like a big brother anymore. What should she do? Li Jianyue suddenly felt a little complicated. She felt like she had grown up. Hugging her little pillow, Li Jianyue looked at the ceiling above her head worriedly. However, these words were undoubtedly like a heavy blow to Li Moyun's already battered heart. His chubby face turned even redder. He looked at Li Jianyue and then at Li Mosen before turning to leave in a huff. Nanny Rong said, "You only know how to bully your brother. Tell your parents later." "Of course not. We are just caring for our brother's future." Li Jianyue immediately retorted. My brother has already been fed by Grandpa and Grandma. What if he can't find a partner in the future? Who's looking for a partner? Xueqi's gentle voice sounded with a smile in her voice as she walked slowly. When Li Moyun saw his mother, he went up to her with a pitiful look and shouted, "Mom! Your son and daughter are bullying me." Li Jianqian immediately waved his hands and said, "I'm not. It's Mosen and Ursu." Chapter 21:87. The siblings joked around and finished their breakfast just like that. Li Xiqing and Xueqi were always together, so they naturally went to the company together. These people of the same age had agreed to go to the amusement park together yesterday. In addition to Li Jianyue, Li Jianqian, Li Mosen, Li Moyun, and Yu Chulin, there were also Rong Panpan and O Xiaoxiao. After the chauffeur of the O family and the Li family sent them to the amusement park, they took out their student IDs and bought tickets together. The group of 7 people spent most of the day queuing up. Fortunately, there were many people, so they chatted and played games together and the time passed quickly. However, Li Jianyue didn't expect to meet someone she wasn't familiar with at the amusement park. Quan Jingyi, who had taken off his school uniform, had also taken off his lazy clothes. At this moment, he was wearing a pointy hat on his back and a lady's sling bag on his back. He held 2 ice creams with a resigned look on his face and looked ahead helplessly. Standing right in front of them was a girl who looked to be the same age as them. She was wearing a pink Lolita-style dress and had delicate makeup on her face. She was holding a camera and smiling brightly as she took pictures of Quan Jingyi. It had to be said that Quan Jingyi's appearance was very good. At this moment, he frowned slightly and looked impatient and helpless. He looked much more pleasing to the eye than the half-dead look in school. Li Jianyue couldn't help but take a few more glances. Then, she was waved by a hand in front of her. "What are you looking at?" Li Moyun followed her gaze and found that among the surging crowd, there was a tall boy who was particularly eye-catching. "Wow, everyone come and look. My sister is looking at a handsome guy." Li Moyun shouted exaggeratedly. "Brother Mosen, look." Li Jianyue immediately glared at Li Moyun and said impatiently, "You are so annoying. I just took a look. That is my classmate." Wow, a male classmate. Li Moyun finally found a breakthrough point to vent his hatred. How could he let it go? He raised his voice and said, "What a handsome male classmate." Li Mosen was originally not far from Li Jianyue. At this time, when he heard Li Moyun's words, his gaze naturally followed the direction that Li Moyun was pointing. On the other side, Quan Jingyi also noticed the commotion and looked over. His lazy, pitch-black eyes met with Li Mosen's. Their eyes met. One was casual, while the other was vigilant. Quan Jingyi sensed the hostility of the other party, and his gaze quickly fell on Li Mosen's side. A girl was grabbing a chubby young man and beating him up. The fair and chubby young man shouted exaggeratedly, big brother, save me, your sister is crazy, crazy." Li Mosen glanced at Li Moyun and said, "You deserve it." Li Moyun wanted to cry but had no tears. He shouted, "You're inhumane for not saving me." Li Mosen ignored him and turned his gaze back to Quan Jingyi. However, Quan Jingyi had already looked away and walked away while eating his ice cream. The girl beside Quan Jingyi glanced at Li Mosen and greeted him with a smile. She caught up with Quan Jingyi and said, "Wow, that mixed-race guy is so handsome. Who is he? Do you know him?" Quan Jingyi shoved the ice cream into her hands. "He's the top student in our school. A senior in year 3. Wow, do you know what it's called?" Chapter 21:88. Seeing that Quan Jingyi had left, Li Mosen realized that this person seemed to be Ursu's deskmate. He had only seen his face once a few days ago. The rest of the time, this guy had been lying on his stomach. Was he sleeping? Li Mosen frowned unconsciously. He should ask their class teacher to change their seats. Such a person would definitely affect Ursu's grades if he was Ursu's deskmate. Li Jianyue was originally a person with weak willpower. Once she had decided on something, as long as someone instigated her, her position would be shaken and changed. Such a young girl was innocent and gullible. Li Mosen was often worried that the young girl would be tricked by others. Now that there was such a delinquent by Li Jianyue's side, it would be terrible if Li Jianyue's little ambition was shaken. Li Mosen thought about this and turned around to find that Li Jianyue and Li Maoyun had already run to buy cotton candy. Oh Xiao Xiao and Rong Pan Pan were holding hands and whispering to each other. The two little girls were smiling happily. Li Jianqian and Yu Chulin did not like to play this kind of amusement park. After being dragged by Li Jianyue to play, the two of them slipped away with the excuse of going to the toilet. At that moment, they had already gone to the cafe in the amusement park to sit. Li Mosen stood in the same place and people around him kept looking at him in amazement. Among them, the majority were girls. Brother Mosen, what flavor of ice cream do you want? Li Jianyue shouted at Li Mosen. I'll buy you a chocolate one, okay? Li Jianyue's voice was not soft. Li Mosen looked helpless and made an okay gesture to her. Li Jianyue smiled happily and said to the girl selling the ice cream, "There's strawberry, chocolate, and vanilla. Can you finish it?" Li Maoyun was holding a hot dog in his hand and eating it happily. Li Jianyue said confidently, "The vanilla is yours, the chocolate is Brother Mosen's, and the strawberry is mine. I didn't say I wanted it. It's okay, just take it. I'll try it and the rest is all yours." Li Maoyun was speechless. Li Jianyue gave the money and licked the ice cream with a smile. After giving the ice cream to Li Mosen, Li Jianyue's eyes fell on Oh Xiao Xiao and Rong Pan Pan. Li Maoyun only saw Li Jianyue running towards the two little girls. Then, the three little girls held hands and walked towards the merry-go-round. Li Maoyun was dragged to line up unwillingly. When it was finally their turn, Li Jianyue smiled happily and rushed to occupy the largest and tallest horse. She turned back and shouted to Li Mosen, "Brother Mosen, help us take a photo." "All right." Li Maoyun was indignant and said, "Brother Mosen, you spoil her too much." Li Maoyun, "It's none of your business." Li Jianyue pouted angrily. "If you have a problem with it, help me take a picture." No. It wasn't that Li Maoyun hadn't tried it before. When he went on a vacation, he was ordered by Li Jianyue to take all kinds of photos. He was exhausted just carrying the camera. Since then, Li Maoyun swore that he would never take photos for Li Jianyue again. It was too much suffering. Looking at Li Mosen's expression, Li Maoyun couldn't help but complain, "This princess syndrome is all because of you. In the future, if any guy can stand her, he will definitely not be able to get married." His voice wasn't loud, but Li Jianyue's ears were sharp. She immediately said, "Li Maoyun." Chapter 2189. Li Mosen's words were heard by a girl next to him and she immediately shouted, "F***CK, didn't they say that they were siblings? This doesn't seem right." The girl's voice was not soft and Li Jianyue immediately looked over. With one glance, she saw the pink Lolita-style dress that the girl was wearing. Wasn't that the girl who was beside Quan Jingyi just now? Li Jianyue blinked her eyes and said, "What's wrong? What's wrong? My brother dotes on me the most. Of course, I have to be responsible to the end." Humph. The girl was frightened by Li Jianyue's confident look and she shrank her neck. She asked weakly, "How are you going to be responsible?" "Of course, you're going to be responsible for finding a boyfriend for me to rely on in my next life." Li Jianyue did not suspect anything and did not think much about it. On the contrary, Li Maoyun had originally thought of the same idea as Li Jianyue. However, after being reminded by the girl, he suddenly realized that there might be another possibility. After all, Li Jianyue and Li Mosen were not biological siblings. Li Maoyun shuddered all over and thought about it in fear. He looked at Li Jianyue and then looked at Li Mosen. Finally, his gaze fell on the girl who was obviously relieved. Seeing this, Li Maoyun couldn't help but touch his chin again. Was he thinking too much? Hopefully not. The smile on Li Mosen's face was obviously a little more restrained than before. His gaze fell on the girl coldly, but it only lingered for a moment before he turned away. The merry-go-round soon began to turn and Li Jianyue sat on it. She was wearing a beautiful pink coat in the style of a cute little princess. Li Jianyue's appearance was exquisite and her smile was like a flower. A casual glance was enough to make people unable to look away and completely attracted to her. The dreamy music surrounded the dreamy lights and Li Jianyue's beautiful and exquisite smile. Li Mosen could not stop the camera in his hand. One after another. However, after every photo, Li Mosen's gaze did not stop on the camera. Instead, He stared at Li Jianyue. In his azure blue eyes, other than the dreamy lights reflected in the bottom of his eyes, there was only Li Jianyue's figure. Sitting on the merry-go-round, Li Moyun yawned and said, "Why isn't it over yet? Let's go play bumper cars, shall we?" "No, what's so fun about bumper cars?" Li Jianyue immediately pouted. "Why don't we go play interstellar travel?" "All right, but let's play the bumper cars first." Li Moyun was very determined. "Oh no, the bumper cars keep bumping into each other. I was almost sent flying last time." When Li Jianyue thought of the unpleasant experience from the last time, she felt a shadow in her heart. "Let's go through interstellar travel." "No, no, no." Li Moyun had no choice but to use his trump card and said, "Brother Mosen will bring you flying. Brother Mosen is very powerful. You were sent flying the last time because you didn't play with Brother Mosen. If you play with him this time, I guarantee that you'll be the one who will be sent flying." "Really?" Li Jianyue seemed to be asking Li Moyun, but she was looking at Li Mosen. Li Mosen received Li Jianyue's puzzled gaze and nodded. "Yes. All right, let's go then." Sure enough, Li Mosen and Li Jianyue drove very steadily. On the other hand, Li Mosen was hit by Li Jianyue's instigation. The more he begged for mercy, the happier Li Jianyue laughed. "Do you still want to play?" Chapter 2190. Still playing? Li Moyun was already dizzy from all the bumps. If he continued to play, he would be the unlucky one. Li Moyun was panting. When he finally got down, all the fat on his body was itchy from the shaking. He looked at Li Mosen and Li Jianyue, who were in cahoots with each other. He was furious. "I must complain to Dad when I get back." Humph. However, it did not take long for Li Moyun to forget about this matter. The children had been playing for the whole day and were starving. Once they got out of the amusement park, they went to a famous restaurant in Kingstown called Pickled Fish. It was said that the food in this restaurant was extremely delicious. It was affordable and delicious. More importantly, the owner of this restaurant was a fan of Honor of Honor. Based on the ranking of Honor of Honor, he could give different discounts. The highest ranking, which was the top 5 of the Honor of Honor, could get a 50% discount. They could also be personally received by the owner and have priority to eat. There was an endless stream of people who coveted the delicious food, and there were even more people who were poisoned by the pesticide. Therefore, apart from the locals, there were also many tourists who came to eat. Unfortunately, among Li Jianyue's group, Li Jianyue and Yu Chu-lin were not very interested in this game. The highest ranking was Li Mosen. He was the Honor of Honor, but he was only ranked 6th in the district. Therefore, they waited for an hour just to queue up. A group of people sat in the queue at the entrance of the restaurant and played games. It was noisy and full of vitality. Occasionally, someone saw them and was attracted by their appearance. Someone looked at them and said, "Do you still need more people? Join me, I'll carry you." The person who spoke was a young man who looked like a student. When he spoke, he looked at Li Jianyue with a smile. Li Jianyue's appearance was the most outstanding among the 3 girls. Her skin was unbelievably fair and her facial features were also like Su Chenxi's. She was charming and beautiful. Li Jianyue was about to answer when she heard Li Mosen say, "No, that's enough." The person looked a little disappointed. When he returned to his friends, he was pushed and laughed at by a few of them. Li Jianyue looked at Sun Shangxiang, who was 0 to 9, and felt a little guilty. She said weakly, "Brother Mosen, am I too weak? I'm not a noob. I'm much better than Moyun," Li Mosen said with a smile. When Li Moyun heard this, he immediately became indignant and said, "Brother Mosen, what you said is not very appropriate. One look at my 18 to 3 Luna and you can tell that I'm very strong." Li Jianyue also felt that Li Mosen was lying through his teeth. "I know it myself," Li Mosen said. "In a while your record will be better than his." Li Moyun snorted disdainfully. "She wouldn't be stronger than me even if I shared half of my strength with her." Oh Xiao Xiao also nodded. Mo Yun is quite good at games. Well, Brother Mosen, you're too biased. Even Rong Pan Pan couldn't stand it anymore. Although Mo Yun is easy to bully, you can't say that. Li Mo Yun said. Hey, who are you helping by saying that? The girls giggled. Li Mo Yun was unconvinced and said, Let's change the lineup this time. I'll lead Xiao Xiao and Pan Pan, and you'll lead Ursu. What do you think? Xiao Xiao and Pan Pan were still all right as they were a little familiar with the game. Although Ursu was no stranger to it, she would only be bullied by Li Moyun. Li Ursu was indignant and said, "There are only 3 of you. I'm not convinced." "Doesn't Brother Chu know how to play too? Let's play together," Li Moyun said with a sneaky smile. Brother Chu has also downloaded the game on his phone. I saw it yesterday. Brother Mosen is so good, it shouldn't be a problem for you to lead Brother Chu, right? Chapter 2191. As the protagonist, Yu Chulin immediately turned to look at him when he heard that. Li Moyun smiled slyly and asked, "Brother Chu, do you know how to play this game?" "I do," Yu Chulin answered subtly. "A little." "Oh." Li Moyun trusted Yu Chulin very much and said, "A little. Let's play then. You, Brother Mosen, and my sister will form a team. I'll bring the cute Xiao Xiao and Pan Pan. What do you think?" "Sure." Yu Chulin agreed readily, and this made Li Moyun smile happily. Although he was a little reckless when it came to playing games, he was still a champion who had fought his way up. Oh, Xiao Xiao was quite talented and was already a star. Rong Pan Pan was already at the peak of platinum and was only 1 step away from diamond. On the other hand, Li Jianyue was a rookie. Although Li Mosen was powerful, how could he play with a rookie and a newbie? Li Moyun was already calculating in his mind and said, "Let's make this clear first. Whoever loses will have to pay for today's meal." "Sure." Yu Chulin was very straightforward and had already taken out his phone. "Go ahead." After Yu Chulin logged in, he immediately clicked on it. Everyone realized that Yu Chulin didn't even have a rank. Li Moyun chuckled and clicked on the 5v5 map. He invited the 3 of them and then entered the team. Li Jianqian sat at the side and watched them fight with each other. He smiled and said, "You guys play then. I'll order the dishes later." Okay. No problem. No one had any objections. After each of them chose their hero, they immediately entered the battlefield. Li Moyun keenly noticed that Yu Chulin had chosen a hero that was free for a limited time. It was a jungler hero that was more difficult. Li Bai. The sword immortal, Li Bai, was dressed in a white robe and had short hair. A wine gourd hung on his waist and he drank from it from time to time. He held a long sword in his hand and a hearty laughter could be heard when he clicked on it. The water of the great river flows from the sky to the sea and never returns. F***CK. It's Li Bai. Rong Pan Pan exclaimed in shock. Li Jianrui saw it too and immediately stopped him. "No, Brother Chu." However, the moment Li Jianrui spoke, Yu Chulin had already clicked on the confirm button. It's over. In a non-ranking match, once the chosen hero was confirmed, it could not be changed. Yu Chulin looked a little confused as he asked, "What's wrong?" Li Jianyue looked as if she had nothing left to live for. She said, "It's over. This person is very difficult. I've been learning for a long time, but I still haven't learned how to play. His HP is low, and his positioning has to be very, very tricky." "Oh. It's all right." Yu Chulin chuckled. "I'll give it a try." Ha 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 ha. Li Moyun could already see the light at the end of the tunnel. "Just give it a try. You'll only get better if you try. If you don't give it a try, how will you know how terrible your death will be?" Li Jianyue's gloating words made Li Jianyue even angrier. She reached out and pinched him. Li Moyun squealed like a pig. "Ouch, ouch, ouch." "It's okay," Li Mosen said. "Ursu, you play what you're good at." Li Moyun grinned and said, "Don't worry, there's nothing she's good at." Ha ha ha. Li Jianyue was so angry that she kicked him again and said, "Who said that? I know how to play as a sorcerer. I'm very good at playing as Zhuge Liang." "That's right. It's because it's faster to escape, isn't it?" Chapter 2192. Zhuge Liang was a famous military counselor during the Three Kingdoms period. He played the role of a sorcerer in honor of kings. His second skill was 3-stage displacement, which allowed him to run very fast. The main reason why Li Jianyue liked to play Zhuge Liang was because he was handsome and had a pleasant voice. However, Li Genue's maneuvering was really not flattering. Li Genue looked at Li Mosen angrily and said, "Brother Mosen, what should I play?" "Let's play Zhuge Liang. The main thing is to be happy. But what if we lose?" "If we lose, we lose. Playing games is originally entertainment." Li Mosen smiled and reached out to rub Li Genue's head. "What are you afraid of? Even if we lose, it's my treat." "That's right." Li Moyun smiled brightly and his chubby face looked like a flower was about to bloom. "If we lose, we lose. Brother Mosen won't blame you. Anyway, Brother Chu is also a newbie. If you want to cheat him, you can cheat him together." "Li Moyun." Li Genue was angry. "Don't you have a conscience when you compare me to a newbie?" "Yes, it hurts. So hurry up and play Zhuge Liang. Let me calm down." Oh, Xiao Xiao laughed. "Moyun, you're so bad." Rong Pan Pan couldn't stand it anymore and said, "Why don't I switch positions with Ursu? Ursu will be in your team and I will be in Mosen and Brother Chu's team. In that case, the difference in strength wouldn't be too big." "No, that's meaningless," Li Moyun said seriously. "It's a battle between me and Ursu. Don't you think so, Ursu?" Humph. While the few of them were joking around, Li Genue had already chosen Zhuge Liang, while Li Mosen had chosen Miyamoto Musashi, who he was better at. Miyamoto Musashi was a Japanese swordsman who was invincible. In fact, he was indeed very invincible. When he was at his peak, he could easily escape from 5 opponents. Although his strength had been reduced, he was still relatively strong compared to many other heroes. Li Moyun laughed when he saw the lineup. Because he knew that Li Genue wanted to play Zhuge Liang, Li Moyun cheekily chose a more difficult hero, Luna. Luna could leave a mark on the enemy's body. As long as there was a mark, the 3 skills could be used indefinitely. What was even more despicable was that the second skill could use the beauty of the moonlight goddess to attract you. Even if Zhuge Liang ran fast, he would still be sucked in. Li Mosen's lineup was Miyamoto Musashi, Zhuge Liang, and Li Bai. On Li Moyun's side were Luna, Zhang Fei, and Sun Shangxiang. Sun Shangxiang was an archer. With one skill she could roll everywhere. Every time she rolled, she would hit someone. She could kill someone. As for Zhang Fei, he was a very ugly and burly man. Zhang Fei's greatest fear was his 3 skills. With Zhang Fei's original ugly appearance, with the addition of these 3 skills, he could directly knock out the enemy because of his ugliness. Enemies who were so ugly that they could only be defeated by their opponents, unable to retaliate at all. When Li Genue saw the lineup of the other party, her face fell. She said, "Brother Mosen, I think we're going to fail." "Don't be afraid. Just don't die." But in reality, it was very difficult to keep Li Genue alive. Some people were not only bad at playing, but they also loved to wander around. Li Genue was such a person. In the blink of an eye, she had died 3 times. Li Genue felt wronged and said, "Can't you guys go easy on me?" "No." Li Moyun was elated. But soon he was surprised and said, "Brother Chu seems to be quite good at playing. You even know how to grow in the wilderness. Damn, you even know how to beat the tyrant?" The tyrant was a small boss in King of Glory with a lot of money. The big boss was called the king. Chapter 2193. Yu Chu-lin, on the other hand, managed to defeat the tyrant king amidst the cries of, "Oh no!" Li Moyun immediately felt a sense of crisis. He moved stealthily on the battlefield and moved towards the hero that Yu Chu-lin was using. However, just as he appeared, he saw that Yu Chu-lin's Li Bai only had a little health left. He only needed one more slash and he would be able to kill Li Bai. Li Moyun laughed and said, "I'm coming. I want both the Tyrant King and Li Bai's head." However, just as he finished speaking, he suddenly saw a string of symbols fall from above his head. Then the hero that he was controlling, Luna, was directly controlled and was stunned. Luna could not fight back at all. System notification. Miyamoto Musashi defeated Luna. Li Bai defeated Tyrant. Li Moyun immediately shouted, "D***, that's too despicable. Why did you sneak attack me?" "There's no need for a reason to sneak attack Fatty," Li Mosen announced expressionlessly as he lowered his head to fight the wild monsters. Li Moyun felt as if he had been shot in the heart. His face was full of grief and indignation as he said, "I'll make you regret saying that." Hee hee. Lee Mosin gave a heartless sneer and then directly stole Father Blue, which Luna relied on to survive. Lee Ma-yun held his long sword and looked at the empty birthplace of Father Blue. He roared again, "I'll go to your house to steal Father Blue." "Come on, I'll leave it for you," Yu Chulin said. So, Lee Ma-yun really went. However, as soon as he arrived, he saw Lee by there killing small monsters. After hesitating for a moment, Lee Ma-yun specially looked at the financial gap between the two parties. He only dared to go out after he was sure that Miyamoto Musashi was not around. Yu Chulin was not very good at playing. After he was sure that he could fight Lee by one-on-one, he ran out with his sword. However, almost at the same time, Li Bai suddenly drew a circle to restrict Luna's movement. Then, Zhuge Liang jumped out from the bushes. Li Moyun shouted, "You guys are too much. Too much. Too much." Zhuge Liang manipulated the flashbang to cripple him. Li Genhua laughed and said, come on, come and bully me." Li Moyun was so frightened that he hurriedly ran away. However, even though he managed to escape, his HP had been reduced to a small amount. Li Genhua and Yu Chulin didn't know how to play the game. If it was someone who was good at controlling the game, any one of them would be able to crush him to the ground. Li Ma-yun angrily found a bush and returned to the city. He shouted, "It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Mo-yun, be careful." Oh Xiao Xiao shouted, "Miyamoto is going over." However, it was too late. System notification. Miyamoto Musashi defeated Luna. Li Moyun sniffled and said pitifully, "Can you kill someone else? You can kill both Xiao Xiao and Sister Pan Pan." "No." Li Genhua shook her head seriously. "They're not as fat as you." His words made his friends burst into laughter. Li Ma-yun clicked on Yu Chulin's battle record and realized that even though Yu Chulin was not very good at playing, he was very conscious about not fooling around outside. Hence, Li Ma-yun egged him on, "Brother Chu, don't always stay at home. Why don't you come out and play?" Yu Chulin smiled. "You said it yourself." Li Ma-yun smiled and said, Yes, I said it." Li Genhua exclaimed, "Brother Chu, don't be fooled by him. He's fooling you to kill yourself." Li Mosin also said, "You won't lose if you don't go out." When Yu Chulin heard this, he smiled slightly and said meaningfully, "Not necessarily." Chapter 2194. Everyone thought that Yu Chulin was definitely a newbie. Therefore, no one paid much attention to him. However, no one expected that not only was Yu Chulin not a newbie, but he was also very good at it. Although his mechanics still looked a little jerky, the contrast between what everyone thought was a noob at the beginning was shocking enough. Later on, Li Mosin won. Miyamoto Musashi, who was played by Li Mosin, won with a high score of 15 points. Yu Chulin's score was the lowest. Li Ma-yun was very unconvinced. He retorted with his hands on his hips, but very quickly, he obediently paid the bill. The weekend passed quickly. Everyone had a good time. Li Genhua was in a good mood when she returned to school. She carried her school bag and sat down humming a tune. The surrounding boys and girls came to Li Genhua and greeted her. Li Genhua felt that her new classmates were really too enthusiastic. After greeting them one by one, a little girl walked over with a red face and said, "Genhua, I know you are Senior Li Mosin's sister. Can you help me pass this letter to Senior Li?" Li Genhua was stunned for a moment. Looking at the girl's red cheeks, she couldn't bear to refuse and quickly nodded. "Sure." The girl was wild with joy. She nodded frantically and shouted, "Then wait for me." Li Genhua's hands were filled with little love letters. Looking at the little pink envelope and the passionate gazes from the surrounding people, she suddenly felt that she had done a very good thing. The girl quickly returned with a beautiful box in her hand. At one glance, it was obvious that it was a small gift that had been carefully prepared. The girl felt the surrounding gazes and her face became even redder. She said, "This is a gift that I specially prepared. It's chocolate." As she said that, she quickly placed it on the table in front of Li Genhua, as if she was afraid that she would refuse. She even said, "Please, I hope that you must pass it to Senior Li Mosin. Please, I really like Mosin." "Hey!" A young voice with obvious impatience sounded. If you want to confess, don't block my seat. Li Jianyue was sitting. When she heard this voice, she looked up. Quan Jingyi looked as if he hadn't woken up yet. His expression said, I have a bad temper. Don't provoke me. At this moment, he was frowning with a face full of impatience. He squinted his eyes as if he was looking at the back of the girl's head, but also as if he wasn't looking anywhere. He then added impatiently, And do you know that you're so ugly? No matter who you confess to, you won't succeed. This sentence made the students in the class who were watching burst into laughter. Xueqi, his mouth is too poisonous. But what he said isn't wrong. She wants the school hunk to confess to her with her looks. Where did she get her face from? But she gave me confidence. I didn't dare to confess before, but now I'm going to confess. My chances of winning are definitely higher than hers. The girl's originally blushing face immediately turned red. She pinched the side of her school uniform and ran away with an embarrassed look on her face. Quan Jingyi tossed his bag aside and sat on the chair. Just as Quan Jingyi sat down, the bell for class rang. The students who had been watching the commotion dispersed. Only a small number of girls lowered their heads and whispered to each other. Their disdainful gazes swept in the direction of the girl just now. Chapter 2195. Li Jianyue felt sorry for the girl when she saw her like this. Quan Jingyi had already picked up the book and threw it on the table. Then he lay down. Li Jianyue looked at Quan Jingyi, who acted as if nothing had happened. She felt a little indignant and whispered, Quan Jingyi. Quan Jingyi didn't seem to hear her and didn't move. Li Jianyue knew that he could hear her voice and continued, You're too much. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was enough for them to hear. Li Jianyue took out the book and opened it. Quan Jingyi finally reacted. He raised his head and glanced at her. Then he sneered. What does it have to do with you? Li Jianyue glared at him. This person was really too annoying. Li Jianyue felt a lump of anger in her heart. She's a girl. What can she do if you talk about her like this in front of so many people? Look at her. She's about to cry. Quan Jingyi didn't even look at that person. He glanced at Li Jianyue. What does it have to do with me that she likes to cry? She cried because of you. No, Quan Jingyi stretched lazily. She cried because of her own ugliness. Li Jianyue was speechless for a moment. The anger in her heart was even more intense. Damn it! This be *tch. Li Jianyue had never hated someone so much since she was young. The teacher came soon. Li Jianyue had no choice but to suppress her anger and turn her head to read the book sullenly. But she was too angry. Li Jianyue couldn't bear to read a word. Li Jianyue didn't know what the teacher said in class. She held a pen and drew an ugly face. Then, she wrote the words, Quan Jingyi, next to it. Then she made dense pockmarks on his face. Li Jianyue poked and poked for a long time, but she didn't feel comfortable. Suddenly, Quan Jingyi turned his head. Li Jianyue noticed it and turned to look. Quan Jingyi glanced at the things on her paper. Then, he raised his thick eyebrows and tilted his head slightly. He said, The teacher asked you to answer the question. Li Jianyue was a little confused. She was indeed in a daze just now, but it shouldn't be like this, right? However, when Li Jianyue turned her head to look to the side, she realized that there were indeed people looking at her. Li Jianyue looked at the pile of formulas on the blackboard and stood up silently. The math teacher was a middle-aged man with thick glasses. His white shirt was neatly tucked into his black pants. His appearance was very clean and decent, but he was an old-fashioned old cadre. When Teacher House saw Li Jianyue stand up, he pushed up his glasses and asked, Do you have any questions? Li Jianyue was stunned by his question. She then asked, Didn't you ask me to answer the question? Teacher Hao's gaze became meaningful as he looked at Quan Jingyi. Li Jianyue finally understood and looked at Quan Jingyi. She saw Quan Jingyi's black head, which was covered by curly black hair, tremble slightly. Even his shoulders were shaking. Obviously, he was smiling. Li Jianyue's face turned red. Teacher Hao said, Student, you still have to be more serious in class. It's high school now. It's different from junior high. Some students shouldn't take pleasure in teasing other students to avoid hurting the harmony. Quan Jingyi's voice was clear and bright. Teacher, this student secretly drew me in class. Chapter 2196. As soon as Quan Jingyi's voice fell, the students in the class seemed to have caught hold of some big gossip and began to make a ruckus. Wow, what does Li Jianrui mean by this? Damn, isn't this Senior Mosen's sister? Could it be that she likes Quan Jingyi? But it's true. Although Quan Jingyi's reputation isn't very good, he's still quite handsome. The discussions of the surrounding students quickly reached Li Jianrui's ears. Li Jianrui already felt embarrassed. Now that she was being discussed like this, she felt even more ashamed. She turned her head and glared at Quan Jingyi. She was so angry that her face turned red. Unlike her, Quan Jingyi seemed to be in a good mood. He turned his head slowly. Li Jianrui was ashamed and embarrassed, but she couldn't say anything. Soon, the class ended. Li Jianrui stood up angrily and shouted at Quan Jingyi, "Are you shameless? How can you say such a thing? Who has a crush on you?" Li Jianrui had never spoken loudly. At this moment, she was angry and her voice was a little louder, but it didn't sound threatening. Quan Jingyi raised his eyebrows slightly. "I didn't say such things. You said it yourself." Quan Jingyi spoke lazily. He wasn't loud. The young man's voice sounded very gentle. Immediately, the people in the class who had come to watch the commotion immediately formed a group and said, "So that's how it is. So Li Jianrui has a crush on Quan Jingyi. F***ck. You can really do whatever you want if you're handsome. But other than this face, Quan Jingyi doesn't have anything else good. Li Jianrui is also very beautiful, but why is her taste so bad?" Li Jianrui was so angry that her whole body was trembling. She slammed her fist on the table heavily. Her little face turned red and she shouted, "I don't." As she said that, her eyes turned red. She looked at Quan Jingyi and stared at him with slightly red eyes. "Why are you so annoying?" When Quan Jingyi heard this, his face seemed to be troubled. He said, "You like me one moment and hate me the next. Why are you girls so strange?" "I don't like you." Li Jianrui stomped her feet in anger. Her voice became much sharper because of her anger. Her eyes reddened as she said, "My 3 brothers are much better than you. Brother Chu is gentle, my brother is smart, and Brother Mosen treats me the best. Who do you think you are? I'm not blind." Quan Jingyi just wanted to tease her. He didn't expect her to refute him so seriously. Quan Jingyi was stunned for a moment. He raised his body slightly and looked at the little girl who was staring at him condescendingly. He was so angry that his face was flushed with anger. He clenched his fists tightly, as if he had done something heinous and unforgivable. At that moment, the young lady seemed to be in a hurry to prove something. She pounded the table again and said, "I, Li Jianrui, will like anyone but you. You're just a rubbish man who only knows how to bully girls. Even my younger brother knows that girls can't be bullied. You're worse than an elementary school student." Li Moyun, a primary school student, sneezed violently in his Year 2 class. All the students in the class heard what Li Jianrui said and began to shout, "So that's how it is. Is it because Quan Jingyi likes Li Jianrui and is too embarrassed to confess, so he deliberately said that she has a crush on him?" Li Jianrui's words were not very damaging, but it couldn't stop the people next to her from jeering. Chapter 2197. Quan Jingyi turned his head away and stood up from his seat. As he yawned, he raised his hands and stretched. The aura that Li Jianrui had just gathered was bumped by his lazy waist. She subconsciously dodged to the side. However, the little bit of domineering aura he had just now disappeared with this dodge. The surrounding girls suddenly became excited. Li Jianrui turned back and the little girls pushed and shoved each other. All of them looked at Quan Jingyi with flushed faces. His eyes were practically glowing. Quan Jingyi walked out of his seat lazily. His footsteps were slow and frivolous. He raised his face slightly. Wherever he went, boys and girls subconsciously made way for him. When Quan Jingyi walked far away, the girls screamed excitedly and shouted, "Oh my God, he's so handsome." "Is Quan Jingyi so handsome? He's just a delinquent, sob sob sob." Li Jianrui was furious. She took the book on the table and slammed it on the table. She was so angry that she sat down heavily. Bah! How could someone with such a bad character be handsome? He was even worse than a primary school student. Li Maoyun, who was sitting in the grade 2 class, sneezed again. After Quan Jingyi walked out, he went directly to the big tree beside the lawn behind the teaching building. It was past 9 in the morning and the sun was just right. The playground was on the other side. It was a quiet corner of the school. There were not many students coming and going, so no one noticed that Quan Jingyi had come to this place. He climbed up briskly and found a comfortable tree branch to lie down. Soon, the bell rang. Quan Jingyi yawned and fell asleep comfortably. Grade 1, 11. This was the class teacher's class. The class teacher's surname was Huang. It was said that she used to be the prettiest girl in the class when she was young. Later, she was severely tortured by time and now she had become a withered flower. A naughty boy in the class gave her a nickname, Daylily. Daylily called Quan Jingyi's name several times, but no one answered. She looked up and asked with a serious face, "Is Quan Jingyi here?" A male student shouted, "He just left after class. He probably went to the toilet." "You haven't come back from the toilet yet?" Daylily was already showing signs of getting angry. Someone else said, "Maybe it's constipation." The class roared with laughter. Daylily looked at Li Jianyue and saw the little girl's round and cute little face. Her expression softened a little and she asked, "Classmate Li, you are Quan Jingyi's deskmate. Do you know where he went?" How would she know? She just quarreled with Quan Jingyi. A male classmate chimed in. That's right. Quan Jingyi almost made the girl cry. He's so ungentlemanly and shameless. He actually said that she likes him. I think he likes Li Jianyue himself. Ha 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 ha. The more Daylily listened, the darker her face became. She reached out and slapped the podium shouting, "Silence! The more you talk, the more outrageous it is. How long has it been since the start of school? How can you just randomly find a partner for your classmates? What will happen in the future?" But when he thought about it, he felt that it was incredible. When Li Jianyue entered school, her parents gave her a generous gift. She wanted to take good care of her daughter. How could she let her fall in love at this time? Daylily couldn't stand it anymore. After arranging for them to study, she asked Li Jianyue to talk to her alone. She also asked someone to find out where Quan Jingyi went. Li Jianyue, angry, who's in love? Li Mosen, serious, no, you must change positions. Chapter 2198. After Li Jianyue came back from chatting with the homeroom teacher, her face was sullen for the entire class. Li Jianyue looked like Su Chenxi. She was fair and tender, and her whole body exuded an aura of spirituality. At this time, even if she had a straight face, it was still particularly attractive. After the morning class, Quan Jingyi did not come back again. Lunch break soon arrived. The boys in the class were fighting and the girls went to the toilet in groups of 3 to 5. Li Jianyue did not have many friends in the class. She packed her bag and subconsciously looked at the window. Every time the last class in the morning ended, Li Mosen would come to look for her. But today, she did not know if he was busy or delayed, but he had not come until now. Li Jianyue stood up and met a male classmate. The male classmate's face was a little red. He looked at Li Jianyue and said, "Li Jianyue, I have something to tell you." "Go ahead. It's not convenient here. Come with me." The male classmate looked down at Li Jianyue's hand on the table. It seemed like he wanted to do something, but he did not do anything. He turned around and left. Li Jianyue did not take it to heart and quickly followed him to the back of the school building. The place here was empty and the sun was blazing. The wind blew through the hall, and Li Jianyue's little skirt swayed with it. A few strands of her hair were also blown into a mess. The male classmate held a small envelope in his hand and handed it to her with both hands. As if emboldening himself, he said in a slightly loud voice, "Li Jianyue, a friend of mine asked me to give this to you. His name is inside. I hope that after you see the contents, you can give me an answer." Li Jianyue looked down at the white envelope in his hand. It looked bare and there was nothing written on it. She reached out and took it. Li Jianyue had no intention of opening it. She asked, "Is this the matter?" The male classmate looked very disappointed with Li Jianyue's reaction. Then, he did not know where to put his hands and wiped them on his trousers. Then he took out his cell phone and said, "Can you add me on WeChat?" "Sure." Li Jianyue didn't suspect anything. She took his phone and keyed in her number. Li Jianyue's WeChat nickname was newly changed. It was called Buddhist Beauty, Little Sun. Just as Li Jianyue finished typing this string of numbers, the phone in her pocket vibrated. Without a doubt, it was Li Mosen. It sounded a little noisy on Li Mosen's side. It was the voices of his classmates around him. "Ursu, where did you go?" "Oh, nothing. A classmate was looking for me just now." "Where are you? Why are you so late?" Li Jianyue's voice was crisp and clear. She didn't hide her rebuke at all. Her sweet voice made the male student in front of her blush as he looked up at her. Li Mosen sounded like he was in a good mood. "I just encountered something pleasant today. Let's go. I'll treat you to dinner to celebrate." She quickly gave him the address and hung up the phone. Then, she looked at the male classmate and smiled apologetically. "Sorry, I have to go eat with my brother. I'll be leaving first." The little boy blushed. Yes. Li Jianyue quickly ran away briskly. The little boy looked at Li Jianyue's back. The heart in his chest was beating especially happily. Just as he was intoxicated, a sudden gust of wind whistled above his head. A huge shadow instantly shrouded him. The little boy was so scared that he screamed. He took a big step back and fell to the ground. He turned his head and realized that it was a person. After taking a closer look, he asked, "Quan Jingyi?" Quan Jingyi was sleepy. After yawning, he turned his head and looked over lazily. Then, he walked over and looked down at him. The little boy swallowed his saliva and stammered, "You! What do you want?" Chapter 2199. When the little boy saw this, he was a little confused. He subconsciously covered the phone in his pocket and asked, "What do you want?" The midday sun was a little bright. Quan Jingyi narrowed his eyes slightly and looked down at him with a faint smile. He looked a little lazy and a little helpless. He asked, "Are you going to give it to me or not?" The little boy looked at Quan Jingyi and wanted to say no. But when he looked at Quan Jingyi's face, he subconsciously thought of the arrogant rumors about Quan Jingyi. His whole body couldn't help but tense up a little. The words of refusal were on the tip of his tongue, but he swallowed them back down. He pinched his pocket and then turned his head. Finally, he took out his phone and pushed it forward. "You have to tell me what you want." Quan Jingyi looked at him and said lazily, "What are you afraid of?" "I just want to add you on WeChat." The little boy couldn't believe it. He looked up and looked at the tree that Quan Jingyi had just jumped down from. His face turned red and he said, "Did you see everything?" Quan Jingyi narrowed his eyes and looked at him. "See what?" "You're confessing to a girl here and you don't dare to say it clearly. You have to say that someone else gave you a love letter?" The little boy's face turned even redder. Quan Jingyi sneered and said, "Don't worry. That Li Jianyue is so slow. She won't find out that the person who gave her the love letter is you." It would have been better if Quan Jingyi hadn't said it. The little boy immediately became a little worried. Yes, Li Jianyue looked quite innocent. If he said that, it would be difficult for her to find out that the person was him. Just as he was feeling bewildered, he suddenly heard Quan Jingyi say, "Hey!" The little boy suddenly came back to his senses and looked up. "Huh!" Quan Jingyi waved his phone in front of his eyes and said, "Unlock it." "Oh, okay." He pressed his fingerprint obediently. After the little boy unlocked the phone, he saw Quan Jingyi standing lazily with his head down and tapping on his phone. Quan Jingyi had just taken his phone and opened WeChat. Coincidentally, as soon as he took it, a new friend notification popped up. "Beautiful Buddha-like girl, little sun. We're already friends. Come and have a chat." Quan Jingyi narrowed his eyes and looked up at the trembling little boy in front of him. The little boy was wearing a pair of thin glasses, and when he was stared at like this, he immediately lowered his head. After a few seconds, Quan Jingyi tossed his phone back to him. The little boy immediately checked. There were a total of 2 new additions and notifications. Before he could react, Quan Jingyi turned around and prepared to leave. That The little boy looked at Quan Jingyi and said unwillingly, "Did you add Li Jianyue's WeChat?" Without turning his head, Quan Jingyi said lazily, "Don't you know how to read the records yourself?" Hearing that, the little boy immediately lowered his head. He noticed that the two new friend requests were the same classic greeting. "We're already friends, let's chat." He breathed a sigh of relief and put the phone back into his pocket. At that time, he had not studied WeChat thoroughly. In their era, most people used QQ. Therefore, he didn't know that WeChat had the function to delete a single message. By the time he found out, it was already too late. When he returned home in the evening, he happily took out his phone and found that Li Jianyue had posted a WeChat moments. "Beautiful Buddha-like girl, little son. Wow, mom cooked personally again. How stupid." The attached picture was a very exquisite home-cooked dish with 9 squares. The last picture was a selfie of the little girl with a kitten emoji. It looked very pink and cute. Seeing that it was posted less than a minute ago, he immediately liked it. However, the next second, a new notification popped up. Chapter 2200. Quan Jingyi had liked it. It was time to post on WeChat Moments? When did Quan Jingyi add Li Jianyue? What the F***CK? The little boy's heart suddenly felt like it had been hit 100,000 times. So, Quan Jingyi took his phone over to add Li Jianyue's WeChat, right? So, in fact, Quan Jingyi also liked Li Jianyue, right? If Quan Jingyi also liked Li Jianyue, with Quan Jingyi's qualifications, he was really, completely inferior to him. His heart instantly felt as if it was scratching his heart and lungs. If he had known this, he would never have let Quan Jingyi take his phone. After Li Jianyue finished eating, she touched her little belly and leaned on the sofa with a satisfied expression. Li Mosin was specially invited to be a representative of the school basketball team today, representing the school to participate in the city-level high school basketball game. Li Jianyue thought about it and decided to post a WeChat Moments to congratulate him. As soon as she picked up her phone, she saw many new notifications on WeChat Moments. "Xiao Xiao. I want to eat too. Pan Pan, Aunt's cooking is really good, I envy you, cry." There were also all kinds of envious comments from other classmates and playmates since childhood. The rest were all likes. Among the 3 or 4 lines of likes, Li Jianyue saw a simple and fresh profile picture. It was a comic boy in red clothes with his head tilted. He had a cigarette in his mouth and wore a gray hat on his head. He looked like he was standing lazily. There was a letter written on his clothes. Why? Li Jianyue recognized who it was at a glance. In the afternoon, she added 2 new friends, one first and one later. The one who added her later was the one who sent her the love letter. The other was the male student who helped to pass the message, which was the boy in the afternoon. And this comic boy in the red shirt was undoubtedly the one who had sent her the love letter. The content of that love letter was actually very simple and very old-fashioned. There were 5 or 6 lines of words which read, "Dear Li Jianyue, hello. Maybe you don't know what my name is, but from the moment you enter the class, I have been deeply attracted to you. I never knew that a girl could be so cute." She smiled, moved, and even when she was angry, she looked like a goddess in my heart. I think this is love. You have succeeded in breaking into my heart. Li Jianyue, I like you very much. Please be with me. A boy who has a crush on you. Yang Zaheo. In fact, Li Jianyue had no impression of this name at all. However, her upbringing from a young age made her feel that it would be very embarrassing and impolite to say such words in front of others. After thinking about it, Li Jianyue decided to reject him tactfully. She didn't plan to fall in love in high school, and she didn't have any interest in a strange boy. He clicked on the person's chat box, clicked on the word, send a message, and wrote, "Hello, Student Yang. I'm happy that you like me, but I won't fall in love. I hope we can learn and improve together in the future." In the end, he even sent a handshake emoji. After confirming that there were no problems, Li Jianyue sent it out. Ding dong. Quan Jingyi was drying his hair after showering. His phone vibrated as he passed by the table. Seeing such a long string of words, Quan Jingyi raised his eyebrows slightly. Then, he understood what Li Jianyue meant. This guy really thought of him as the so-called friend of the male student in the afternoon. Chapter 2201. The inexplicable reply made Li Jianrui a little confused. He looked up and down at the words he had sent. Between the lines, it felt like he was rejecting her. How was it gentle? Before Li Jianrui could think clearly, she received another message from the other side. This time Yang Zihao said, "I can't help but fall for you." Li Jianrui was speechless. Were all boys so good at talking nowadays? If they could fall for him like this, she really didn't know what kind of attitude she had to use to stop the boys from falling for her. Li Jianrui thought about it and decided not to reply. If she didn't reply, there would be no hope, right? When Li Mosen came out of the shower, he saw Li Jianrui sitting on the sofa at home. She looked distressed and was holding her phone. Li Jianrui seemed to notice that Li Mosen had come out and looked up. The distressed expression on her face was even more obvious. She said, "Brother Mosen, have you ever liked a girl?" Li Mosen almost choked on his saliva. His first reaction to her question was, did she sense his thoughts about her? So, was this a test? But as soon as this thought came up, Li Mosen was denied by his own rationality. Impossible. Li Jianrui couldn't have this kind of intelligence. Li Mosen calmed himself down and asked, "Why are you suddenly asking this?" Li Jianrui didn't notice Li Mosen's strangeness at all. She said with a bitter face, "No, I'm just asking." Li Mosen sat down calmly and asked, "Why do you suddenly want to ask?" "Well," Li Jianrui looked at Li Mosen with her head tilted and said honestly, "Someone wrote me a love letter today." Li Mosen stopped drying his hair and looked at her. Li Jianrui continued, "Didn't you look for me later? After we added each other on WeChat, I rejected him on WeChat. Then he said this to me." Li Jianrui showed the phone to Li Mosen. There were only a few sentences in the chat. Li Mosen finished reading it at a glance. Finally, his gaze fell on the name that Li Jianrui had given this person. Yang Zihao. Li Mosen remembered this name and looked up at the little girl in front of him. "How do you want to reply?" The last message was sent by Yang Zihao. Li Jianrui had no intention of replying. Li Jianrui was confused and said, "I don't know either." "I'll reply for you." Li Jianrui nodded immediately. He moved his butt away a little and patted the spot beside him. Then, he sat down naturally. Li Jianrui's little head immediately leaned over and looked at Li Mosen's slender fingers typing. Haha. Li Jianrui looked at it and felt that something was wrong. These two words, together with the exclamation mark, felt like a curse. Just as she was about to say something, Li Mosen continued, "Oh, then you can fall for it." Then, Li Mosen dragged the WeChat account into the blacklist. Quan Jingyi, who had received these words, was drinking water. Seeing this, his eyelids twitched. Even the act of drinking water became a little difficult. How could Li Jianrui say such a thing? You really can't judge a book by its cover. Quan Jingyi replied with an ellipsis. Then, a red warning sign appeared. You are no longer a friend of this person. Please add him or her again. Quan Jingyi. Chapter 2202. Li Mosen looked at Li Mosen's actions in a daze and said, "Brother Mosen, that's not very good." Li Mosen looked up at her and asked, "Why not?" "Ah, isn't that too rude?" Li Mosen raised his eyelids and said, "Polite? If you are polite to this kind of person, then he will pester you to the end. Do you want to be pestered by him?" "I don't think so." Li Jianrui didn't feel that this person had brought her much trouble at all. She continued, "In any case, he is my classmate. If I really blocked him like this, then what should I do during the class gatherings in the future? Also, students in the same class will always see each other. That would be very awkward." Li Mosen looked at her with a somewhat helpless expression and said, "Silly girl, don't worry. It's okay. You are doing the right thing." Li Jianrui wrinkled her nose and said, "But I don't like doing this. Brother Mosen, return my phone to me." Li Mosen raised his hand and pointed his finger at the tip of her nose. He said, "I am doing this for your own good. You probably don't know, right?" "What?" Li Jianrui asked. Li Mosen said, "I've encountered such a thing before." Li Jianrui nodded. Li Mosen's appearance was really too outstanding. She was already used to such things. A pair of big and round eyes looked at him and asked, And then? Is that how you solved it? Lee Mosen shook his head. No, I didn't solve it like that at that time. So, at that time, the girl took advantage of the situation and went around saying that I gave her a chance. She even announced that she was my girlfriend. Lee Genue's eyes widened in disbelief. It can't be. Did you actually agree to it? Lee Mosen looked helpless. Of course not. I said that I won't fall in love at such a young age. Lee Genue immediately nodded. Yes, it's not good to fall in love at such a young age. Dad and Mom hate it, so we can't fall in love at such a young age. After Lee Genue finished speaking, she continued to ask, what happened next? After that, I was harassed by that female classmate, Lee Mosen continued after a pause. For quite a long time. And then, later, during an outdoor activity, I told her not to do this. It would make me hate her very much. And then she started crying, saying that I let her down, that I cheated on her feelings, and that I must expose my bad behavior. When Lee Mosen talked about this, he looked a little angry, but he felt more helpless. If I had rejected her directly at that time, and didn't even leave her contact information, things would not have happened later. Lee Genue had never thought that there would be such a shameless person in this world. However, when she thought about it, she felt that it wasn't right. How could a girl be so shameless? Lee Genue thought for a moment and asked, Brother Mosen, is what you said true? Why would I lie to you? That girl is still my classmate. All my friends know about this. I'll get them to tell you at lunch tomorrow. Wow! Lee Genue exclaimed. What about the truth? Brother Mosen, did you play with her feelings? I just didn't delete her contact information. Chapter 2203. It was terrifying to think about it. Who would have thought of such a thing? It was impossible to guard against it. Sure enough, the outside world was too messy. Lee Genue decided that for safety's sake, it was better to add her classmate's WeChat. Lee Genue thought about it and blocked his friend's WeChat as well. Lee Mosen was very pleased. You're worth teaching. Lee Genue chuckled and quickly returned to her room with her phone. Yang Zihao pondered for a long time before he decided to send a WeChat message to the girl he liked to make his presence known. He thought about it for a long time and thought of many classic lines, such as hello, I am Yang Zihao, your classmate, comma. Have you read today's letter? What do you think? Comma, Lee Genue, I am Yang Zihao. I hope you can consider my feelings and so on. But in the end, he still forced out 2 words. Hello. 2 simple words, polite and not rude. After thinking for a long time, he finally pressed the send button. However, the next moment, a long string of words popped up. You are no longer a friend of the other person. Please add him/her. Again. Yang Zihao's full of anticipation suddenly froze, turning into a big ice cube that had been hit hard. In an instant, it cracked into pieces. This. I've been blocked. He immediately opened her information. Indeed, there was no one on her WeChat moments. Yang Zihao's heart turned cold. How could this be? Lee Genue seemed to be quite easy to get along with. Why did she suddenly block him? Could it be that she had just seen the love letter, and after seeing it, she directly came over to blacklist him? The more Yang Zihao thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. He clutched his chest in agony. That day he couldn't sleep. The next day, when he entered the classroom with a pair of big panda eyes, there were only a few people in the class. Lee Genue hadn't arrived yet. Yang Zihao waited for a long time. When almost everyone in the class had arrived, he saw Lee Genue slowly walking over. When she walked over, the gazes of both boys and girls were attracted to her. Her face was rosy and she seemed to be in a good mood. She carried her school bag and walked in while humming a tune. She sat down in her seat. Yang Zihao's eyes were glued to the screen. Suddenly, he felt his eyes burning up. She was really a girl who attracted a lot of attention. How could he be worthy of such a dazzling girl? Yang Zihao couldn't help but look away. He lowered his head, took off his glasses, and wiped the corners of his eyes. When he put on his glasses again, he suddenly saw a black shadow in front of him. The sudden appearance of this figure startled Yang Zihao. She looked up and saw Quan Jingyi hanging his school bag on his shoulder. He looked like a carefree young man. Quan Jingyi was a real delinquent. He was a delinquent in every way. He was clearly wearing his school uniform, but his entire temperament was like a hooligan's, making people feel that they didn't dare to provoke him. Yang Zihao didn't want to have anything to do with this kind of person. He mustered up his courage and asked, "What's the matter?" Quan Jingyi was a little tall. When he heard this, he bent down and asked in a low voice, "Hey, did she block you?" Yang Zihao felt as though his heart had been stabbed. But soon after he understood. He stomped his feet in anger and said, "You're the one who did this?" Quan Jingyi straightened his back. The smile on his lips was still there. He raised his eyebrows and looked as though he had expected it. Then, without saying anything, he turned around and prepared to return to his seat. Chapter 2204. Yang Zihao's voice was especially loud and he had no intention of hiding it. Quan Jingyi hadn't been scolded like that in a long time. His eyebrows twitched and he stopped in his tracks. Just as he was about to turn around, something hit his head. Quan Jingyi was caught off guard and his cheek was scratched by a piece of paper. Cries of surprise came from all around. Everyone's eyes focused on them. Among them was Li Jianrui. Li Jianrui looked sideways and saw that the young man who sent her the letter yesterday was looking at Quan Jingyi angrily. As for Quan Jingyi, his originally carefree look had completely disappeared at this time. Instead, it was replaced by a dark expression. It was obvious that he seemed to be angry at a glance. Li Jianrui was used to seeing Quan Jingyi's lazy look. Seeing him like this, she felt that he was a little scary. Obviously, she wasn't the only one who felt that way. The girls next to her had similar reactions. Quan Jingyi turned around and looked at Yang Zihao. Suddenly, his hand loosened and his bag fell to the ground. Then, he suddenly took a step forward. In the next second, Yang Zihao screamed in fear. "Ah!" His scream wasn't loud, but it revealed his nervousness. "You want to hit me?" Quan Jingyi picked up his collar. The high school student's overly developed height exerted a strong sense of oppression in front of the short Yang Zihao. Yang Zihao's entire body was lifted up. The tips of his feet could only touch the ground. He looked embarrassed and disheveled. Yang Zihao glanced at Li Jianrui out of the corner of his eye. His pale face turned red. He straightened his back and shouted, "Quan Jingyi, don't think that I'm afraid of you. You despicable person. You only know how to do some." Ah! Before he could finish his words, he received a heavy punch on his cheek. The children who went to school here were all young masters and daughters who were used to living like princes from a young age, or they were exceptional students who excelled in both conduct and academics. Yang Zihao happened to be both. How could such a weak and gentle little chicken be a match for such a big man? After the punch, Yang Zihao was already a little dizzy. At that moment, the bell rang for class. Quan Jingyi had no intention of letting go. He said, "Are you still going to scold me? Isn't your mouth very good? That's it?" Yang Zihao was embarrassed and in pain. Tears were about to fall from his eyes. He glared at him with reddened eyes. The look in his eyes under his gold-rimmed glasses was especially fierce. Quan Jingyi sneered and poked his face twice with his finger. "Are you glaring at me?" His eyes are so powerful. Four-eyed people are indeed different. Some of the students next to him started laughing. Li Jianrui couldn't stand it anymore and said, "Quan Jingyi, don't go overboard." Quan Jingyi looked over and pursed his lips. "What's the matter? Didn't I just send you a love letter? Did you upgrade me to your boyfriend?" These words set off a huge wave in the class. Love letter? Wow, 6666. He actually sent a love letter to Li Jianrui. It can't be. That little four eyes? Ha ha ha, I'm dying of laughter. How could Li Jianrui possibly like him? When Yang Zihao heard this, he was so ashamed and angry that he could barely lift his head. He pushed Quan Jingyi with both hands and shouted angrily, "That's enough. Don't talk nonsense, you despicable man. You did it on purpose, didn't you?" Chapter 2205. Those words were too hurtful. Yang Zihao was young. When he heard those words, He felt like he was about to burst into flames. His small and thin body suddenly rushed out from behind the table and looked like he was about to hit someone. But Quan Jingyi was tall and easily blocked his fist. He looked at him with a faint smile. Quan Jingyi didn't move at all. He didn't even speak. But his gaze was enough to make Yang Zihao feel insulted. Yang Zihao shouted. However, because he looked small and skinny, he wasn't very intimidating. Instead, he gave off the illusion that he was a child fighting with an adult. When the students in the class saw this, they thought it was funny. Quan Jingyi didn't move at all. He just stood there and blocked Yang Zihao. There was a look of helplessness and mockery on his face. It was more like a cat playing with a mouse. Li Jianyue saw it clearly. She also knew that there was a huge difference in strength. It wasn't just a difference in height. It was a fundamental difference in their aura. That's right. How could an obedient student win against a delinquent? What are you doing? A middle-aged man's voice was heard. It was the dean. His roar sent everyone back to their seats. Everyone moved quickly. However, Quan Jingyi was still confronting Yang Zihao. At that moment, Yang Zihao didn't look too good. His eyes were red and he felt humiliated and indignant. When the dean saw this, he immediately made a decision. Quan Jingyi, why did you bully your classmate? Quan Jingyi found it funny. He turned his head and shouted, Dean, when did you see me bully my classmate? It was this kid who bullied me, okay? The dean's face darkened. How could he bully you? All of you, follow me to the office. The class was in an uproar. It was Little Four-Eyed who started it. Quan Jingyi didn't even do anything. Dean, this is too unfair. But it's normal. Quan Jingyi doesn't have a good reputation. If I were the dean, I would definitely be the first to suspect Quan Jingyi. But Quan Jingyi wasn't bullied. If you ask me, this Little Four-Eyed is overestimating himself. He actually wanted to fight with him? Quan Jingyi was the champion of the youth mixed martial arts team in junior high. When Li Jianyue heard this, she couldn't help but look sideways at the empty seat beside her. Quan Jingyi turned out to be so powerful? However, no matter how powerful he was, it was a fact that he had a bad temper and bad character. She had originally thought that Quan Jingyi and Yang Zihao would return after the next class. Who knew that they wouldn't return to the classroom until the second class? A group of male students ran to the headmaster's office to eavesdrop. When they came back, they vividly described how Little Four Eyes was crying his eyes out. They asked him what he was doing, but he refused to say. It was said that he even called his parents. Quan Jingyi's father was the mayor. He was very busy, but he still took some time out of his busy schedule to come to school. After the second class, Li Jianrui did not understand the math questions. She brought her textbooks and draft paper to ask the teacher. When she walked past the hallway of the classroom office with the books and drafts in her arms, the door to the director's office opened. Chapter 2206. Quan Jingyi probably didn't expect to see her so suddenly. After being stunned for a moment, he turned his face slightly as if to block the slap mark on his face. But soon, Quan Jingyi turned back again as if he didn't see Li Jianyue and walked out. Quan Jingyi, Li Jianyue stopped him. Did you not explain clearly? The teacher doesn't know the situation. I can be a witness for you. It's obvious that you didn't cause trouble first. Quan Jingyi's footsteps paused slightly. Then he snorted disdainfully. Then he said in an ethereal voice, "There's no need." It was just 3 words, but it sounded as casual and lazy as ever, as if he didn't care about it at all. Li Jianyue looked at his back that was too well developed for his age in year 1 and felt inexplicably uncomfortable. She turned and went into the headmaster's office and knocked on the door. "Come in." The headmaster's voice came. Li Jianyue carefully opened the door and walked in. At a glance, she saw the headmaster, another couple, and a middle-aged man who looked more elegant. The couple looked very young. In front of them stood the male classmate who had helped his friend deliver the love letter yesterday. However, the male classmate's eyes looked red. Even the pair of glasses couldn't hide his sadness. When he saw it was Li Jianyue, he lowered his head and rubbed his hands together. He looked a little timid. When the parents behind him saw Li Jianyue, they took a second look. One of the parents said, "This female classmate looks a little familiar." I think I've seen her somewhere before. Then, he asked Li Jianyue, what's your father's name? Li Jianyue was also used to such a scene. She answered easily, hello, uncle. My father is Li Xiqing. The answer was, my father is Li Xiqing. Instead of, my father is Li Xiqing. Although there was only a difference of one word between the two, the meaning was very different. Hearing this, the middle-aged man also looked over. He looked at her calmly and said, so you're Mr. Li's daughter. You look very similar to your mother. Li Jianyue smiled. The headmaster pushed his glasses and looked at Li Jianyue. He asked kindly, Student Li, why are you looking for me? Li Jianyue was still holding the math book in her hand. The headmaster continued, your math teacher's office is next door. Li Jianyue nodded her head and said, I know, director. It's just that I feel the need to help explain that what happened in the classroom just now was not entirely Quan Jingyi's fault. When Yang Zihao heard Li Jianyue's words, he looked shocked. He pinched the hem of his school uniform and looked at Li Jianyue. He bit his lower lip and didn't say anything. Li Jianyue noticed his gaze and had a rough idea of what was going on. She was a little angry and said, actually, this student had a conflict with Quan Jingyi first. Then, he went to hit Quan Jingyi. Quan Jingyi didn't fight back, and then... Enough. A young man's voice came from outside. Li Jianyue turned around and saw a tall figure standing at the door against the light. His hand was holding the handle of the office door, and his expression was calm. He looked at Li Jianyue and said, what has it got to do with you? I didn't ask you to be nosy. Li Jianyue was stunned. I'm helping you explain. You didn't hit anyone. Why? Why did he want to be beaten? Chapter 2207. His words made the face of the middle-aged man who looked more refined in the office change slightly. When Li Jianyue heard this, she felt a little sorry for him. After Quan Jingyi said this, he looked down at Li Jianyue and reached out to press her head. Let's go. It has nothing to do with you. Why are you so enthusiastic? Li Jianyue was a little annoyed from being pressed down. She retorted, do you think I want to? It's all because you're too annoying. That's why everyone wronged you. If you were a good person, would people not believe you? At the end of the day, it's because of your usual behavior. For example, right now, I want to help you explain so that you won't be wronged. Shouldn't you thank me gratefully? How dare you blame me for being a busybody? My kindness is not rewarded. Quan Jingyi sneered and didn't say anything else. He turned around and prepared to leave. Wait a minute, the middle-aged man said. Li Jianyue looked back and found that the man looked similar to Quan Jingyi. He should be Quan Jingyi's father. Quan Jingyi's father was the new mayor of Kingstown. His name was Quan Jingqing. Quan Jingqing looked more cultured. He looked like a gentle uncle. If she hadn't seen the big palm print on Quan Jingyi's face with her own eyes, Li Jianyue probably wouldn't have thought that he would hit someone like that. Quan Jingqing walked over and reached out to put his hand on Quan Jingyi's shoulder. Quan Jingyi stood there lazily as if his bones had been pulled out. He didn't react when his shoulder was put on. Quan Jingqing put on a stern face and bellowed in a low voice. Don't stand properly. Stand properly. Quan Jingyi straightened his body and turned to look at his father with a faint smile. He said, what do you want? His tone was lazy and sounded sloppy. It was really infuriating. Li Jianyue thought that if someone responded like this when she was talking to him, she would definitely be furious. However, Quan Jingqing was much calmer than she had imagined. He only looked at Quan Jingyi deeply, and there seemed to be guilt in his eyes. It was very faint, but it was enough to move people. He said, Xueqi, since you were wronged, why didn't you explain clearly? Everyone in the office, including Yang Zihao, his parents, and the director, tensed up when they heard this. In fact, this matter had already been concluded a while ago. The conclusion was that Quan Jingyi bullied a classmate, and Quan Jingyi needed to apologize to Yang Zihao. However, Quan Jingyi's attitude was very tough. Not only did he refuse to let go, but he also faced the teacher in a provocative manner. Such an attitude easily angered Quan Jingqing. Quan Jingqing seemed to be unable to let go of his pride. Without saying a word, he gave Quan Jingyi a big slap. Quan Jingyi pursed his lips and turned to walk out of the office, ignoring everyone's reaction. At this moment, Li Jianyue came in. According to her, the results seemed to be different. Quan Jingqing's attitude now was undoubtedly to turn the tables for Quan Jingyi. Yang Zihao's mother was very angry and said, "So according to what you're saying, my son bullied him? Your son is so tall and strong. It can't be that my son went looking for trouble first, right?" Seeing this, the director hurriedly said, "What exactly happened? I think there must be some misunderstanding. Why don't we listen to the two children's explanation?" Chapter 2208. Explain? Now that Li Jianyue was here, was it still his turn to explain? Looking at them, they seemed to know Li Jianyue very well. Yang Zihao's heart raced. He pinched the hem of his school uniform and wanted to look at Li Jianyue, but he couldn't lift his head. Quan Jingqing frowned unhappily when he heard the dean's words. He turned to look at Yang Zihao and his parents, who were standing behind him. "Since my son didn't bully your son, doesn't that mean your son is lying? Shouldn't you seek justice for my son as well?" he said. When Yang Zihao's parents heard this, they said, "If it's really like what this female student said, then we will certainly make our son apologize. But my son would never do such a thing." Yang Zihao had been an obedient boy since he was young. How could he bully his classmates? How could he lie? The one who lied was definitely that delinquent. It couldn't be their son. Yang Zihao's parents were very confident. They were also very confident in their child. Li Jianyue was angered by their attitude and said, "But this is what I saw. Would I cover up for Quan Jingyi to bully another student?" But Yang Zihao suddenly spoke. He didn't lift his head. He pinched the hem of his school uniform and said, "You like Quan Jingyi, don't you?" When Li Jianyue heard this, she couldn't believe it. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Yang Zihao pinched the hem of his shirt. When he thought about how he had been blacklisted on WeChat, he felt terrible. He decided to go all out. He gritted his teeth and said, "You know it yourself. Everyone in the class is saying that you like Quan Jingyi. If that wasn't the case, why would you come here and say such things?" Li Jianyue was furious. She clenched her fists and said, "Nonsense. How could I?" "Enough." Quan Jingyi looked at Yang Zihao coldly. "This is embarrassing, student Yang." The courage that Yang Zihao had mustered up was like a balloon that had been poked. It collapsed in an instant. His face flushed red. He looked up at Quan Jingyi and realized that he was looking at him with an ugly expression. Quan Jingyi said, "I didn't intend to hold it against you, so I didn't bother to explain. But you just had to step on my bottom line." Yang Zihao's heartbeat quickened. Fear and nervousness flashed across his face. He stammered. "We all know what the truth is. I don't want to argue with you, so don't pester me," Quan Jingyi said openly. "If I did it, I won't deny it. But if I didn't do it, I won't apologize. Classmate Yang, Li Jianyue only came to explain to me out of goodwill. You don't have to drag her down with you. After all, you wrote her a love letter." Love letter? This was the director's office. The teachers and parents were all present. Hearing these two key words, the parents' faces changed slightly. Yang Zihao was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He immediately jumped up and shouted, "I didn't. Don't talk nonsense." Li Jianyue was also confused. Wasn't it his friend who wrote her the love letter? How did it become this person? Quan Jingyi sneered. "You know very well whether I'm talking nonsense or not." Chapter 2209. How did I threaten a classmate? Quan Jingyi raised his eyebrows. "I was just communicating normally with student Yang. Is that a threat? Why is the threshold for threats so low now?" "Enough," Quan Jingqing said. "I believe that student Li was not the only one who saw what happened. Dean Xie, what do you think we should do?" Dean Xie complained in her heart. In their hearts, Quan Jingyi was a delinquent. So when the dean saw the situation, she immediately felt that it was Quan Jingyi's fault. However, now that Li Jianyue had suddenly stepped forward, The situation had fallen into an awkward situation. It wasn't Quan Jingyi's fault? Then wasn't the slap that Mayor Quan gave him wrongly? Was it for nothing? That's true. But since it wasn't student Quan who did it, why didn't he explain? Yang Ziheo's mother asked. Quan Jingyi smiled. This kind of thing has happened many times since I was young. If I had to explain everything, wouldn't I be exhausted? Moreover, my credibility with you is almost in the negatives. Even if I explained, would you believe me? His words made all the parents speechless. Yes, would they believe him? Most people would only think that Quan Jingyi was just looking for an excuse to deceive them. So, he simply didn't say anything and didn't explain anything? When Quan Jingqing heard his son's words, he felt a little uncomfortable. He said, "So you simply don't explain? It's a useless struggle." "There's no point in doing it," Quan Jingyi said carelessly. "No matter what happens now, you've already hit him. I should be able to leave." Dean Xie felt that it was better to resolve this matter behind closed doors. Now that Quan Jingyi left, the truth of the matter couldn't be clarified. However, just as she was about to speak, Quan Jingyi had already turned around. Dean Xie hurriedly called out to him, "Wait a moment, the matter isn't clear yet." As expected, Quan Jingyi stopped. However, he only turned back to look at her. Then, he turned to look at Li Jianrui and reached out to grab her hand. Without a word, he walked towards the door. Li Jianrui was shocked. She subconsciously looked back at the parents behind her and smiled awkwardly as a greeting. Then, she was dragged away by Quan Jingyi. After they walked out of the director's office, Li Jianrui hurriedly retracted her hand and said, "How can you be like this? You don't even explain yourself when others misunderstand you. Everyone says that you're a delinquent. If this is how you get your reputation as a delinquent, then you're being wronged." It was not fair at all. Just because of his bad reputation, they could directly convict him? Li Jianrui felt very angry. However, the person who was standing in front of her didn't seem to care at all. This made her even angrier. Quan Jingyi smiled faintly and said, "I didn't expect you to be so righteous. You've turned into a heroine of justice. Are you going to support the weak? You can still laugh." "I'm so angry. Just now, that male classmate even said those words to frame me. Slandering me for liking you. How could such words be said so casually?" She hated Quan Jingyi. Although this hatred had dissipated a lot after the scene just now, she still hated him. She didn't hate him less just because she felt sorry for him. Li Jianrui had been the little princess of the family since she was young. She didn't know how to hide her emotions. At this moment, all her emotions were written on her face. She glared at Quan Jingyi and pouted and clenched her fists. He didn't need to listen to what she wanted to say next to be able to see what she was thinking at a glance. To be honest, she looked so stupid that it was cute. Quan Jingyi couldn't help but laugh softly. He reached out and patted her head. He said, "All right, I'm not that weak. I've been used to it since I was young. On the other hand, if I clarify everything, he'll be in trouble." Li Jianrui's eyes widened. "Well, actually, it's better for others to be in trouble than for you to be in trouble. It's just a slap." Quan Jingyi used his tongue to touch the inner wall of his cheek. "It's not that bad." "That's not bad." Li Jianrui subconsciously covered her face. "Well, if I get hit, I think I'll cry." Quan Jingyi's smile widened. He couldn't help but think, "Do I need you to think? I don't even need to think to know that you'll cry." Thinking of this, Quan Jingyi shook his head. He turned around and said, "Go back to class." "Ah, what about you? Delinquents won't be in the mood for class if they get hit." As he spoke, he turned around and waved his hand at Li Jianrui. Then, he slowly walked away with lazy steps. Li Jianrui felt that he was too much. He was so confident in skipping class. But she also wanted to skip class, however, this thought could only remain in her mind. Soon, Li Jianrui returned to the classroom. After half a day of classes, Li Mosen went to class 11 to look for Li Jianrui as usual. Zhong Yikuan and Lu Yuanyang followed behind him. The female students in class 11 were all looking forward to this moment. When they saw Li Mosen, their eyes widened and they pushed and shoved each other. Their eyes were filled with hearts. Li Mosen was already used to this. He asked her, "What do you want to eat for lunch?" When Li Jianyue heard this, she replied casually, anything is fine. Hey, Zhonghua looked at Li Jianyue and said, why is little sister so distracted today? What are you thinking about? Ah, Li Jianyue looked up and said, nothing. Lu Yuanyang came over enthusiastically and said, little sister, stay and practice basketball with us after school. I'll let you see how valiant your brother Yang is. Go away. Zhonghua pushed him. You're valiant? Don't listen to him, little sister. In our school's basketball team, the best player is your brother. As for second place, it's definitely me. What does this guy have to do with it? When Lu Yuanyang heard this, he was unhappy. Aya, you stupid Zhonghua. If you have the guts, come and play solo. I'll torture you to death. Come on, I'm not afraid of you. Zhonghua puffed out his chest. The two boys bumped into each other and they seemed to be at loggerheads. However, they were quickly separated. Li Mosen pushed them apart and snorted, childish. Hey, how can you say that? Am I still your little cutie? Zhonghua tugged at his sleeves and looked heartbroken. Li Jianyue couldn't help but laugh. She couldn't help but ask, is everyone on your school's basketball team so lively? Chapter 22:10. When Li Jianyue heard this, she looked at traditional Chinese medicine practitioner and asked, is it very harsh? It's not that harsh. It's just that we are all the only children in our families. Sometimes, Mosen's words are not pleasant to the ear, so... At this point, Lu Yuanyang interrupted traditional Chinese medicine practitioner and said, stop right there. What do you mean by sometimes his words aren't pleasant to the ear? Mosen's mouth is beyond saving. All right? It's just that we have a stronger psychological endurance. If it were anyone else, who would be able to take it? Lu Yuanyang said. When Lu Yuanyang said this, Li Mosen's eyes swept over. Lu Yuanyang immediately turned his head away and pretended that the weather was good as he whistled. Li Jianyue looked at Li Mosen and asked, is there no one else now? We're a little short for the time being, Li Mosen said calmly. Traditional Chinese medicine practitioner shook his head when he heard this. How is it a little short for the time being? There will always be a time when we're not short of people. As Lu Yuanyang walked, he seemed to have thought of something and said, that's right, little sister, I remember that you are in class 11. When I passed by last time, I thought I saw your desk mate. He looks a little familiar. What's his name? Li Jianyue replied, Quan Jingyi. He's a delinquent. He's a delinquent with a bit of a personality. Li Jianyue thought that the world might have some misunderstanding about him. Actually, he is quite a good person. When traditional Chinese medicine practitioner heard Quan Jingyi's name, his eyes lit up and he said, so he's Quan Jingyi. Li Jianyue was a little surprised. She looked over and asked, why is Quan Jingyi so famous? Why do so many people know him? It's not strange that they know him. He is indeed quite famous. He was already quite tall when he was in junior high. He was also the leading basketball player in his previous school. Not only that, he was also the school hunk in his middle school. He's quite handsome and is very popular with girls. The leading basketball player in the team. Li Jianyue was more concerned about this. She suddenly had an idea and said, if we can let Quan Jingyi join the basketball team, wouldn't that solve your urgent problem? The school basketball team was currently lacking players. If someone like Quan Jingyi could join, he would definitely be a great help to the team. Moreover, the inter-school basketball competition was approaching. As the representative, Li Mosen could imagine how nervous he must be. Lu Yuanyang was fine. When traditional Chinese medicine practitioner heard Li Jianyue's words, he immediately came forward and asked, how is your relationship with your deskmate? It doesn't seem too good. It was a little. Li Jianyue was a little ashamed. Li Jianyue was Li Jianyue. Jianyue was a little. Li Jianyue was goddess Li Jianyue. Li Jianyue felt a little awkward when she was asked this question. She added, but since he was on the school basketball team in junior high, he must be interested in basketball. If we invite him to join, he should be willing to join. It's hard to say, Lu Yuanyang said with an unfathomable expression on his face. From what I know, Quan Jingyi did something to offend his stepmother during the summer break when he was in junior high school. Now, he doesn't even have an allowance every month. Other than providing him with food and a place to stay, his family doesn't give him a single cent. That's why he occasionally sneaks out to work. Li Liyang heard. Chapter 22:11. Zhonghua nudged Lu Yuanyang and said, "Forget it. Why do you care about this? The most important thing now is to think of a way to get him into the basketball team." "What do you know?" Lu Yuanyang looked disgusted. "If you want to get Quan Jingyi into the basketball team, you have to solve the problem of his pocket money first. If you don't have money to spend, you won't even have money to go to the internet cafe. How are you going to survive then?" Zhonghua secretly clicked his tongue when he heard that. That's true. But this father is too cruel. He actually started to abuse his son for the sake of his concubine. TSK TSK TSK. Li Jianrui heard that and had a plan in her mind. Li Mosen brought them to the top floor of the campus cafeteria. It was the most expensive and least frequented Chinese and Western restaurant. Li Jianrui was a little distracted during the meal. Li Mosen saw it and asked her, "I saw you looking for Dean Xie this morning. There were a few other students in there. What did you do?" Li Jianrui didn't expect to be seen by him. Her little face looked conflicted for a moment and then she said, "Something happened, so I went to help." Who knew that he didn't want her help at all? Speaking of which, Li Jianrui also felt that she was a little nosy. Li Mosen didn't ask any more questions. He nodded and continued eating. Vonghua and Lu Yuanyang had known Li Mosen for more than 2 years. At this time, they felt that something was wrong with Li Mosen. He didn't seem too happy. Although this feeling was very faint, it really made them feel this kind of emotion. The two of them looked at each other and saw a look of certainty in each other's eyes. Li Jianrui didn't notice at all. After eating, she found a place to rest for a while. The first class in the afternoon was the class teacher's class. When the bell rang, Quan Jingyi walked in lazily from outside and sat in his seat. When he sat down, he put a small thing in Li Jianrui's cabinet. It was a pink thing. Li Jianrui looked down and saw that it was a box of strawberry-flavored milk. Li Jianrui was a little surprised and looked up at him. Quan Jingyi didn't look at her and said casually, "It's leftover from lunch. I don't like strawberry-flavored milk. You can solve it." Li Jianrui blinked and picked up the strawberry-flavored milk. It was a brand she liked very much, but the packaging was very new so she didn't recognize it immediately. But on the packaging, there were 2 blue words in the shape of a chicken's feet. "Thank you." Obviously, it was written by someone. Such ugly words must be from Quan Jingyi. Was it because of what happened in the morning? Was it Quan Jiu? Before Li Jianrui could figure it out, Quan Jingyi's voice sounded again. "If you don't like it, then throw it away." Li Jianrui was now sure that this guy definitely didn't want to thank her in person, so he wrote it in a roundabout way. With a look of disdain in her eyes, Li Jianrui put the milk back and said, "It's shameful to waste it. I'll drink it after class." Li. Quan not. Care. Quan Shen. Shen Quan. Yudon. I Lu. I is. Jin. Quan of Jing. Shan Ming not. Shan. I with. Li. Li to Li. Chapter 22:12. Li Jianrui didn't expose him. Soon, the homeroom teacher arrived. "Hello, teacher," they shouted in unison. Although Quan Jingyi's voice wasn't loud, it was still loud. Li Jianrui heard it and thought to herself, "This guy doesn't seem too bad. Everyone must have some misunderstanding about him." In fact, the good student who argued with Quan Jingyi in the morning was not as good as Quan Jingyi. At least, Quan Jingyi wouldn't say something unrealistic because he wanted to shirk responsibility. After the homeroom teacher asked the students to sit down, she looked around and finally her gaze fell on Quan Jingyi. Many students in the class also noticed this and followed the teacher's gaze. Quan Jingyi raised his head slightly and raised his eyebrows slightly, looking at her with some doubt. The homeroom teacher said, Quan Jingyi, sit at the back. Sun Xiaoyu, sit up. Quan Jingyi and Sun Xiaoyu, who were called, looked at each other. Unlike Quan Jingyi's calmness, Sun Xiaoyu looked a little confused. Quan Jingyi asked, Why? Li Jianyue's parents said that you have affected Li Jianyue's normal learning state. They hope that you can change seats. The homeroom teacher's tone was indisputable. Then, she looked at Sun Xiaoyu in the back row of the third group. Sun Xiaoyu was a male student who looked quite innocent and silly. His eyes were very small and he was a little fat. The school uniform he wore was very clean and he looked quite cute. However, Sun Xiaoyu didn't want to change seats. Sitting at the back was not only more free but also more secretive, okay? No matter what he did, he wouldn't be discovered immediately. Especially his position, it was a good place. Sun Xiaoyu felt a little wronged and said, Teacher, I don't want to sit at the front. It's more suitable for me to sit at the back. The teacher said, Change seats. Your parents also said that it's easy for you to be distracted sitting at the back. Now that you are in high school, you still have to pay attention to your studies. If you don't change seats, I can only tell your parents. Li Jianyue looked at them. To be honest, she didn't want to change seats either. But, what did her parents say? She didn't think that Quan Jingyi had affected her. Moreover, she didn't say anything about school to her family. How did her parents know? Quan Jingyi had already packed his things and was carrying his school bag. Then, he stood up and threw his school bag on Sun Xiaoyu's table. He tilted his head and said, Go up. Sun Xiaoyu wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He wanted to struggle one last time and said, Teacher? There's no room for discussion. The teacher was impartial. If you really want to change your seat, it's very simple. For the first mock exam, as long as you get into the top 50 of your grade, you can choose your own seat to sit with. Then the homeroom teacher looked at everyone and said, The same goes for the rest of you. However, before you have the ability to get into the top 50, you better behave yourself. Sun Xiaoyu was on the verge of tears as he howled. How is that possible? There are more than 500 people in the entire grade, and there are 15 classes. If I could get into the top 50, would I still be sitting in class 11? It's good that you know. Hurry up and change classes. Li Jianyue felt a little uncomfortable. Sun Xiaoyu didn't want to change, and she didn't want to change either. But who knew that Quan Jingyi didn't have any reluctance to leave? Chapter 22:13. Li Jianyue's temper was considered good, but she still felt very unhappy when facing Sun Xiaoyu like this. She had been used to being pampered by her family since she was young. She had never encountered such unhappiness before. She called out unhappily, Sun Xiaoyu. Sun Xiaoyu was about to fall asleep, but when he was called out, he immediately came back to his senses and asked, What's wrong? Li Jianyue's little face tensed up and she said seriously, I don't care if you sleep in class, but can you sit up straight? At least don't squeeze over to my side. My seat is very small. There's no way to study at all. Sun Xiaoyu's chubby face turned slightly red and he said, Oh. Then his chubby body moved to the side. Li Jianyue's expression finally looked better, and she sat up straight. Soon, the bell rang. It was a math class. The math teacher was a very short-sighted old man. Sun Xiaoyu put his book upright and hid his head behind it. Then, he began to doze off. He had just adjusted his sitting posture during the break, but not long after the class started, he moved back crookedly. His head was even drooping. Li Jianyue couldn't stand it anymore. She reached out and pushed him. Sit properly. Sun Xiaoyu was still in a daze. When he heard that, he sat up straight. But after a while, he was beaten back to his original state. Li Jianyue was furious and said, Can you sit properly? I don't even have a seat. The class was unusually quiet. Li Jianyue's voice suddenly rose in the classroom. When she said that, the surrounding students all looked over. Li Jianyue's face burned, but she felt angry when she looked at Sun Xiaoyu. Sun Xiaoyu also noticed that many people around him were looking over. He also blushed and said with some grievance, Why are you so overbearing? I didn't take up much space. Although I'm fat, It's quite hurtful for you to say that. Li Jianyue was even angrier. She said, can't you just sit up straight? What does it have to do with your weight? If you don't sit properly and make your deskmate uncomfortable, I won't be able to go to class. Ahem. The math teacher slammed the podium. Sun Xiaoyu, sit up straight. Don't disturb the other students. If there's anything else, we can talk after class. Let's go back to class now. Sun Xiaoyu sat down and muttered in a low voice. I don't see you like this when Quan Jingyi is sitting here. He sleeps in class, and I sleep in class. You just like him and not me, right? His voice wasn't loud, so only Li Jianyue heard it. Li Jianyue was furious. Look at how you're sitting. At least Quan Jingyi is sitting up straight. He won't disturb me. He sleeps in his own seat. He's nothing like you. Sun Xiaoyu was unconvinced. How is that possible? Who can sit up straight when they sleep? Look back and see how Quan Jingyi is sleeping. When Li Jianyue heard this, she subconsciously turned her head to look. At the table in the last row, Quan Jingyi sat crookedly. He leaned on the table and moved from one table to another in one breath. His movements were extremely arrogant and wanton. Li Jianyue was stunned and explained, that's because he's sitting alone. When I'm there, I also sit alone. I'm used to it now. I don't want to change seats. If you can't stand it, go and ask the teacher to change seats, Sun Xiaoyu muttered. It's your parents who asked you to change seats. Go and ask your parents to change seats. Chapter 22:14. Sun Xiaoyu's tone was not very good. Li Jianyue was so angry that she didn't want to talk to him. She turned around and continued to listen to the class. Li Jianyue knew very well that she was not the kind of girl who was particularly smart. If she wanted to go to the same university as Brother Mosen, she had to study hard so that she could continue to go to the same school as Brother Mosen. However, if someone disturbed her, she would be easily distracted, so she couldn't sit with such a deskmate. Even though Quan Jingyi slept in class and occasionally skipped classes, he was still a very quiet person. Occasionally, he would listen to the class as well. Compared to him, Sun Xiaoyu was really terrible. Li Jianyue held back her anger. After class, she stood up and planned to talk to the head teacher about changing seats. After standing up, she squinted and saw Quan Jingyi with sleepy eyes. He was sitting up lazily, stretching and yawning. He looked a little hot. There was sweat on his forehead and his bangs were wet. His slightly long black hair was stuck to his forehead, and there were traces of his sleeves on it. As if sensing Li Jianyue's gaze, Quan Jingyi looked at her sideways and raised his eyebrows slightly, as if asking, what's the matter? Li Jianyue suddenly felt a little depressed. They had been deskmates for at least several weeks. Why didn't he have any reaction after changing seats? Bad guy. Li Jianyue turned around and went to find the head teacher. The head teacher nodded to show that she understood, but asked her to bear with it for a while and wait for her class to change seats. However, there was no class today, so Li Jianyue could only bear with it for 2 more classes. On the way home, sitting in the back seat of Li Mosen's car, her unhappy look did not change at all. Li Mosen had long noticed that she seemed to be unhappy. He rode the bicycle, and his slightly curly black hair flew in the wind. His white skin seemed to glow under the setting sun. He asked, do you want to go eat ice cream? Li Jianyue's eyes lit up. Can I? The ice cream here was, of course, not simple ice cream. Li Jianyue and Li Mosen had a little secret that belonged only to the two of them since junior high school. Li Mosen knew a very good place. There was everything there, which was equivalent to a small amusement park. However, the location was a little remote. It was not far from the school, but it was far from their home. As soon as Li Jianyue finished speaking, she realized that Mosen was heading in the direction of the mini amusement park. Li Jianyue's mood improved instantly. She pinched Li Mosen's school jacket and asked, what if Mom asks about it later? Mom and Dad are not at home today. I just told Dae-soo, and he already knows. Li Mosen's voice was bright and clear. He seemed to be smiling, but it was a little vague against the wind. Li Jianyue couldn't help but smile. She was in a great mood. When they arrived, Li Mosen locked the bicycle and led Li Jianyue inside. Li Jianyue jumped up and down. She stuck her head out to look around and asked in surprise, "Why haven't I seen that before? Is it newly built?" Li Jianyue pointed at a tall Ferris wheel. "It's so beautiful. If it was a little later and the lights were all turned on, would it be even more beautiful?" "Yes." Li Mosen held her hand. "Then let's play something else first. We can stay a little longer today. We'll come to see it together later." Li Jianyue nodded excitedly and hugged Li Mosen's arm. A satisfied smile finally appeared on her face. She pointed to the pink ice cream stall not far away and said, "I want that. I want 2 balls, 1 chocolate and 1 strawberry." Li Mosen's blue eyes looked down at her bright smile. The slight tension disappeared without a trace. He reached out and rubbed her head dotingly. He said in a light tone, "Okay." Hearing this word, Li Jianyue proudly straightened her back. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.